Hey everybody, welcome back. You're listening to the Total Yards podcast. You know what, man? I gotta get a new logo. My wife's a graphic designer.
Hmm.
I should probably ask her, like,
Yeah,
hey,
the
can I
total
get?
basis graphic.
Yeah, I kind of like the background being behind me at all times. Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's just kind of misleading. No, we're not doing baseball today, and that person you hear on the other side of the microphone is my good friend Alex Robertson from Virginia. How you doing today, man?
Doing pretty good, man. I'm excited to talk about the league and unfortunately how I've had a little bit of bad luck too.
I'll be the judge of that. Let's see here. Well, this is unlike the baseball thing, where this is a fantasy football, mostly to talk about our league, the league that's called the Felipe Invitational. I mean, this league was pretty much built at the last minute, so I didn't have a really creative name except to use my name for it, the Felipe Invitational, because I mean, it really, but at the end, it really does describe what this is all about. You know, these are people who've been asking me, hey, you have a league? Do you have a football league? You have space in your football league? Like, I don't have a football league. I'm in a
Mhm,
football league. I just not my league. It's somebody else's. So, okay, well, let me
mhm.
know if you want to join one. And then and just to give people background, it was you, Raheel, Tyler, and Noah. Most people don't know who those guys are, but it's that little circle of four people plus me. That's five people. I think we have I have something in my mouth. I think we have a chat that we just simply call the Power Five Conference because it's just us.
Oh, it
And
got the name got changed.
oh, it got what's it called now?
Noah had a wonderful idea of changing it to the Dangerous Knights crew because we all have at least a common interest in I think you should leave with Tim Robinson.
Oh my God, is it the 55 burgers 55? Is it that guy? Is that the guy?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
That's
still
actually
forget it.
what I initially named my team, but then about halfway through the season, I was like, nah, I kind of gotta like go with like something more fancy with the player, and named my team Khalil Shakira because that kind of makes sense.
It was there's a Bills wide receiver named Khalil
Yep,
Shakir, right? Okay.
here, yeah.
That is, yeah, I thought so. I thought so. Uh, well, like I was trying to say here is that you guys, you know, I've been fortunate enough to meet you guys, to know you guys, and I
Mhm.
figured, well, if I'm gonna make a any fantasy football endeavor, I want you guys to be a part of it, just like you guys have now become this in basically in 1 year, you guys have become the main core of my fantasy baseball league, the for the podcast, the Total Basis Fantasy Baseball League. You guys have become the core, and I
Mhm.
figure, well, if I'm gonna create a fantasy football league, I want these guys to be the core as well there. So you guys are the core, and it's not a coincidence that four out of the five guys in that five-man core made the semifinal. Tyler, Felipe, myself, Raheel, and Noah, the guys who talk the
Oh
most, and I'm not including you because you finished outside of that group in terms of like placement,
man.
but yeah, yeah. But it's not a surprise that four out of the five guys, and these are the four most active members in terms of the chat, who ends up in the semifinal. So there's a correlation there, but I'm gonna let you guys out there decide what that correlation is. But I mean, it's just how I envision it in my mind, right? Just how I drew it up on the board. Like, well, if I'm gonna create a football league, I want these guys to be the core. So I do thank you for you being a part of that core and encouraging
Of
me
course, man.
to do this. And it's been fun. A lot of controversy, though. I know you guys have a complaint about quarterbacks not getting enough points, and my complaint is that defenses get way too much points. Then that's the thing I wanted to avoid was for this to become a quarterback defense league where that's all you need and everything else is just um it's just interchangeable. And I thinking to myself, no, running backs and wide receivers should be the most important pieces, and then quarterback and defense, those are the ones who should be somewhat interchangeable. But defense has got to, I think, defense. I got to either tweak the defenses, or I'm even thinking of eliminating defenses and just going
Mm.
individual players. Like because if you're gonna like if defenses are going to score like 40 points on any given notice, you might as well have real players out there. So at least we know some of the, and I do kind of miss it about having individual defensive player slots is
Hmm.
I got to know some of these defensive players that I would have no business caring about if it wasn't for fantasy football. So I kind of would like to go back
Yeah.
to that. But yeah, I don't want to see, oh, well, my defense was my best player this week. Like, well, that's sorry. That's kind of
Yes.
same thing with kickers. I'm this close to eliminating kickers, or at least not giving them so many points for 50-yard and
Yeah.
60-yard points. They're only equal 3 points in real football. So I'm thinking of maybe eliminating those bonus points for kickers because there's no way in God's green earth that kicker should be outscoring a running back who's getting like 15 carries a game, right? I mean, do you
Mm.
see it that way, or do you think I should just leave it alone? What's your thought process there?
I feel like with the defense, uh, I know in my Yahoo league we have both a defense slot and four slots for defensive players. So you have like a safety, a linebacker, a defensive lineman, and then I think it's just like any like defensive back spot, so you could get like a corner or a safety. But we have both, and I'm interested to see how that could work out for this week. Because I mean, like, yeah, you're right. Like the defenses a lot of times do get way too many points, but I would like to still be able to see teams in the league have defenses, but you can maybe just like adjust some of the points and then add um, the individual players. Now, kickers, yeah, I feel like if it's just like, oh, like he made like three field goals today, that's 9 points. Like, just keep it pretty simple because like I said, there'd be no way that someone like I'm going to use Braden Aubrey as an example because he put out like a really solid year, but there's no way that someone like that should be like outscoring. I don't know, like a. I hate to use this as an example, but it's the first person that came to my head. But like, say like if Saquon had kind of like an okay-ish week, there's no way that a kicker should be outscoring them.
All right, Matt Wright. Oh, I shouldn't. Let's do not average, but let's do fantasy points. Overall fantasy points. Chris Boswell of the Pittsburgh Steelers got 181 fantasy points this year.
Mm.
All right. So let's see how does that compare to tight end in terms of yeah, 181 fantasy points. That would have put him at third place among tight ends, which tight ends is a
There's no
problem.
way that, yeah. I mean, I know like a lot of teams still struggle to have that like really solid tight end, but regardless, I mean, sure, you can win and lose games by, making or missing field goals and extra points, but you're, and I loosely consider tight ends in the skill position. There's
Yeah.
no way that a kicker or a defense should be putting up more production than people that should be putting up like 15, 20 points a week routinely, like it's clockwork. And
I mean, I know
I just
tight
feel like
ends.
that.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Finish your thought.
No, I was just gonna say like that. I feel like that for those other spots, maybe just kind of just like adjust the like point totals, like what each thing gets,
I thought
and
about
then
that.
be
Yeah.
yeah,
It's just how many more points do I have to give out though? I mean, we already do the standard 10 yards equals 1 point. I think I don't think we do full catch. I think we do half PPR, so maybe I could do that, do
mm,
a full point for a catch, a reception.
mm,
But how much more do I have to do? Like that's the other thing because there's only so many things you can. I mean, should touchdowns be worth like 9 points for tight ends? I don't want to do that either. But yeah,
yeah,
and I know tight end has been struggling the last few years. It's almost going the way of the fullback, right? But you still need tight ends,
mm,
right?
yeah,
And I'm one of the things I thought about is, if we want to increase the stock of some of these flex position players, it might be time to consider adding, becoming a two tight end league and adding an extra flex spot. And that way, now
yeah,
you're forced to make sure you like the folks are now having to not just depend on quarterback and defenses, but definitely go out of their way to make sure they have their wide receivers and running backs intact, which that's going to bode bad for me because that's my strategy regardless. Uh, it-
Hmm.
but if that's what it's going to take to make sure that people are not drafting kickers and defenses ahead of certain tight ends, then so be it. Um, I mean, I got lucky with my strategy once again. I always wait till the very last minute to draft a tight end anyway, but I always
Hmm.
hit. I mean, Brock Bowers was the number one tight end in terms of fantasy accumulation, uh, but he's
Hmm.
only but he averaged 3/10 less points than the number one kicker in our league. So definitely, I can definitely need to maybe scale it back. I know as fun as it is to speculate giving 5 points for 50-yard kicks, field goals made, I think it might be time to not just do away with that, but also punish kickers more for missing field goals because they seem to be so automatic nowadays. Um, I hear a background noise on your end, just so you're aware. In the meantime, at wide receiver, like okay, so what did I say it was? Chris Boswell, 181 points. At wide receiver, that would have been Chris Boswell was a better player in terms of fantasy accumulation. Chris Boswell was a better player than Devontae Adams, Jordan Addison, Cortland Sutton, T. Higgins, Tyreek Hill. That's the world we live in because of my shenanigans, right? 181 points. That was better than Brees Hall, DeAndre Swift, J.K. Dobbins at Najee Harris. Najee Harris, who gets like 20 carries and bruises along to 3 yards a carry. It seems like he's out there busting his ass trying to earn every single yard. Meanwhile, Chris Boswell just kicking a field goal and getting more points than Najee Harris. That's ridiculous in my book, and shame on us
Hmm.
for not calling it out sooner than that. But let me see. What's your typical Najee Harris game? It's like I feel like it's 20 carries for 60 yards and a lot of black and blue bruises all over his body. Uh, I see one game against the Browns because the Browns always play tough against the Steelers. 16 carries, 53 yards, one touchdown, 11 points. That was week 14 against the Browns. Out of curiosity, what did Chris Boswell what did Chris Boswell do in that game against the Browns? So 11 points for Najee Harris. Chris Boswell against the Browns in week 14, I believe it was. 11 points. That's so
11
dumb.
points.
That is so dumb. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna revamp the whole kicking format here. And then at quarterback, 181 points. I know this is a point of contention with you guys, but 181 points is better than Geno Smith, Matt Stafford, C.J. Stroud, Tua Tagovailoa, Derek Carr, Drake May, Anthony Richardson, Russell Wilson. Way, way better. So yeah, definitely tweaking of the system of the scoring system is due in that regard. But anyway, and then on defense, the number one defense was the Broncos defense at 276 points total, which
I'm
among
thankful that I picked them up off of waivers.
yeah. Which, by the way, one, two, three, four. That's fifth among flex position players. The Broncos defense was better than Justin Jefferson, Bijan Robinson, James Cook, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Josh Jacobs, Devon Achane. So definitely need to tweak that. All the more reason to maybe do away with defensive teams because I try to reward everything that makes a good defense. But if it's gonna create this ridiculous scoring,
Hmm.
if I do bring it back, I would probably just do maybe one defensive team per team because right now I have it the max at three defensive teams. But if I do bring it back, it should only be one defensive team, and then you got to make a big boy decision when it comes to waiver when it comes to their bye week. But yeah, this shouldn't be the norm. This is ridiculous.
Hmm.
And that's on me because I didn't have the foresight to think that this could be a problem, and it ended up being a problem. But yeah, if this is gonna be the way it is, and I might as well just do defensive players instead. But we'll see. I have a whole off season to think about it, and I'll probably lean on you guys to help out
Hmm.
um, in that regard as well. But anyway, what's done is done. Let's go ahead and share the screen here. the
Yeah.
spreadsheet that I sent you, you'll notice that there's going to be some color on my version. I forgot to format it, but basically the colors you see here, red is really good. Orange is above average. Anything with a yellowish hue or tint to it is average. Green is below average, and blue is just awful. And as you can see, Seth from all big names had an awful season, but he basically gave up after like week 2 or 3. But this is the guy I kind of like was making fun of during our draft show because all he did was just draft all like the so-called big name players. He must have heard me say that because then he changed his name to all big names. But it was really like, oh, I know this guy. I'm gonna add him. Oh, I saw him in a commercial. I'm gonna draft him, and so on and so forth. And then he just kind of disappeared. And I don't know, man. He's a prime candidate to not come back next season unless he, I mean, I don't know. Runs down the street with in a Cupid outfit this Valentine's Day and begs for forgiveness in that regard. I don't know, but there's a reason why he ended up going 1-13. So we're not gonna talk too much about him. But yeah, Jalen Hurts was his best player, averaging 18.2 fantasy points a game. And then we get to Angel, who we did talk about before the show. We kind of affectionately call him Bad Luck Angel, but can't really say it was all bad luck here. Average points differential was negative 223 points, so that's not good. And but to be fair, that is the highest amount of points given up this season by anybody. So
Hmm.
I guess that's bad luck in itself, right? Giving up, seeing teams just pound them like all these points against you. But he also scored, yeah, that's the least amount of points in the league as well. So I
Mm.
guess it's his 11th spot is well deserved, and his best player was Brian Thomas Jr., which we talked about before the show that when your best player is a
As a rookie
rookie,
receiver,
uh, that can't that can't be good for your overall prospects here. Any last words for Angels team before we move on to your team?
um, I just I can't really think of too much other than that it seems like it is just a lot of bad luck and like we mentioned before the show, like um, maybe his picks were just too safe. I don't know. I can't remember exactly who he drafted or who he picked up off of waivers or anything, but
I'll mention it to you really quick right now, but we talked about it before the show. He leaned heavily on the Arizona Cardinals. You know, there's such a thing as stacking.
mm,
You know, well, I got my quarterback. Let's stack him up with James Conner and Marvin Harrison because I have Kyler Murray at quarterback, which you did the same thing with the Texans. You finished in 10th place.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And this is why I don't encourage that. I rather diversify the portfolio a little bit, although I'm the same guy who went out of his way to get Chase Brown and Jamar Chase on the same team, but I wasn't looking to stack up any Bengals players. I just saw I
Hmm.
was only looking. I mean, you guys had me, you guys, all of you guys collectively gifted me Jamar Chase with the eighth or ninth pick overall, and Chase Brown was a running back that I drafted in every single one of my mock drafts late in the drafts or relatively late in the drafts.
Hmm.
And I definitely drafted him in my other league as well. So it just so happens that they play on the same team, but I wasn't really looking to stack up any teams on my team. You know why I don't do that? Because
Hmm.
there's a bye week situation. Although with the Cardinals, their bye week was going to come late in the season, but there's a bye week situation. And then what
Hmm.
happens when expectations don't live up to the hype, or when the hype doesn't live up to expectations, I should say? Then you're in real
Yeah.
trouble. Now it's a domino effect. Because if Kyler Murray sucks, then that means James Conner's gonna suck, and Marvin Harrison's definitely gonna suck. And in your case, if
Yeah.
C.J. Stroud sucks, then who were your players again on offense? The wide
Joe
receivers.
Mixon and Tank Dell.
Yeah, Joe Mixon was hurt. I mean, he got hurt against the Bears very early on in the year with
Hmm.
with an ankle sprain, and I believe he did try to tough it out and come back. And I mean, he did
And he
play. I
did
mean, it's not like
pretty
he was.
good for he did pretty good for a stretch and then just like tanked out at the end of the year.
Yeah, and I see that Joe Mixon ended up being your best player by average point. I don't know how many total points that was, but just by average, that's 16.3 points that he ends up
Hmm.
being your best player, which would make sense. Joe Mixon has always been a very productive player when he is healthy. But in terms of getting back to Angels team, you know, he had established veterans and Garrett Wilson, Devontae
Mhm.
Smith, and the rookie ends up being your best player. I guess you can call that bad luck, but I mean, I think what ended up
Oh,
happening with Garrett Wilson and the future of Angels team was once they got Devontae Adams, it was pretty much Garrett Wilson was
yeah,
not going to be.
the
Um,
production level was going to be down anyways.
Yeah, because that's not what you expected on him. Plus the fact that he was playing with Aaron Rodgers recovering from that Achilles heel surgery, and by the time Garrett Wilson and Aaron Rodgers got things going in Week 5 against Minnesota, I'm assuming that was Aaron Rodgers still playing at that time because Garrett Wilson scored 22 points against the Vikings, 20 points against the Bills, and then he would proceed to do double-digit games the next 3 weeks. But
Hmm.
then you bring in Devontae Adams, and I don't know what the timeline is. I forgot when Devontae Adams came in, but you I think it's pretty safe to say that people were expecting for less touches for Garrett Wilson once Devontae Adams came in. I definitely wasn't discouraged when I saw Devontae Adams get traded to the Jets. I was actually encouraged that this would be
Hmm.
a very you know promising situation for Devontae Adams.
Yeah,
Um,
because you know how much Aaron Rodgers likes to throw to him,
Yeah. Now, like I
which
said,
means
I don't have all the touches or the statistics in front of me. I just know what I know, what I experienced firsthand. And I didn't care. I as a Devontae Adams owner, I kept starting him. Why not?
mhm.
I had no one else on my bench anyways, but Devontae Adams' upside with the Jets and Aaron Rodgers throwing him the ball right there. Devontae Adams, 183 and a half points for the season.
Hmm.
Garrett Wilson, 185.5. So if Devontae Adams isn't there, Garrett Wilson might be his uh point production might have gone way up. Way,
Oh
way
yeah,
up.
it probably would have been at least well like 40 points more, probably.
Yeah, let's see here.
He would have been at least in like the probably 220, 230 range.
Yeah, and because when Devontae Adams came back against when he after the bye week, they had the bye week in week 12.
Hmm.
Devontae Adams went on a tear, 14 and a half against the Seahawks in week 13. 20 and a half against the Dolphins, 45 and a half against the Jaguars, 15 and a half
Oh.
against the Rams, and then against a tough Bills defense, 6.5 points. So remember, 14, 20, 45, 15 in that 4 week stretch from week 13 to week 16. So the Seahawks through the Rams. What did Garrett
Hmm.
Wilson do while Rodgers and Devontae Adams were building up rapport again? Hold on, I'm on the other screen. You can't see this, but I'm trying to multitask here. Seahawks 6.5 points. Dolphins 14.5 points. Jaguars 12.5 points. The Rams 8 points. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a huge
that's not
difference.
wide receiver one numbers.
And unfortunately, folks drafted Garrett Wilson as a wide receiver number one. At
Hmm.
the end, he was wide receiver one on the low end at best.
Hmm.
You know what I'm trying to say? Like he went from a
Yeah,
bona
yeah,
fide.
he's kind of.
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say like he's kind of like that like wide receiver one and a half because in any other circumstance he would have probably been at the one production, but he was kind of relegated to the two production once that trade happened. And as soon as that happens, like I said, you know the production is going to dip off a lot because Rodgers likes Adams, and that's been his go-to guy.
So he was 15 points away, Garrett Wilson was from getting to 200 points. You tell me, Garrett Wilson or Jamison Williams from the Detroit Lions? Gun to your head. Pick one player.
Preseason, I would have probably gone with Wilson just because we know he would have gotten more touches. But looking at the season as a whole, probably Williams. But I can't think off the top of my head what his production was like.
It was it's basically have he has come on strong the last couple of weeks. Other than that,
Hmm.
he's just so damn unpredictable, and there's been
Yeah.
questions about his motor. So, yeah. So just strictly in a vacuum, right? Pound for pound, who would you want on your team if all things are equal, right?
If all things are equal, I would like to think that Garrett Wilson would still be.
Yes.
That guy, because he's kind
Yes.
of established himself a bit more.
Yes.
Now, if we're going strictly off of possibility, things might even out a little bit more because Williams has the the ability to put up really big weeks.
We've
But
seen it,
like you
but
mentioned, you you, you don't know what you're going to get out of him. It's kind of like trying to think of the phrasing, but yeah, it's just so unpredictable. He's like a freaking roller coaster. He just goes up and down, up and down, up and down.
yeah. And like I said, there's questions about his motor up there in Detroit, which is hard to fathom. You can't play on a Dan Campbell team and you have a questionable motor, but that's what the podcasts that I listen to tell me. So, but I
Hmm.
do love Garrett Wilson in a vacuum. Like
Yeah.
moving forward, Garrett Wilson, if everything where he's the number one guy without question, and everything
Hmm.
around him is in a perfect situation for him to flourish. And same thing with Jameson Williams. I would want Garrett Wilson on my team. Malik
Hmm.
Neighbors or Garrett Wilson. I think that's pretty easy. I think we all would want Malik Neighbors at this point,
Hmm.
right? Okay, and I'm looking at the flex position, by the way. So flex position, so it's running backs, tight ends, and wide receivers. Chuba Hubbard or Garrett Wilson? Me, Garrett Wilson, without even a doubt.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, it definitely also doesn't help that Cuba's playing for Carolina, who is absolute
But again,
garbage.
vacuum. Think about
But yeah,
vacuum. Vacuum, vacuum. It's gonna. This should be fast, right?
yeah, yeah,
Garrett
yeah.
Wilson or
It's
Terry McLaurin.
definitely
Garrett
good.
Wilson for me. Two Ohio State wide receivers, right? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Mm.
But you pick. You now it's your turn to pick. Garrett Wilson or Terry McLaurin.
I'm still picking Wilson. I just still have a little bit of like a small kind of love for McLaurin though.
Yeah, I like
Uh,
him too.
but in a vacuum, yeah, it's for most of these scenarios, it's way too obvious.
We get to a trio of running backs: Joe Mixon, Chase Brown, James Conner. I don't give a damn. In a vacuum, Garrett Wilson all the way. Do you think the same way, or
Mhm.
do you disagree with that?
I agree. I just do feel like out of those three backs, and I would like to think that you would agree with this. Mixon is the closest and makes it a little bit more of a run for the money, but obviously
No,
Wilson is still the better player,
I don't think it's close. And
all things equal.
I don't think it's close. And Mixon getting hurt and getting older, because we still got to account for age. I know I said all things are equal, but
Oh
these guys, I mean, Mixon is still in his late 20s, early 30s, last I checked, right?
yeah.
And I do love Chase Brown, but Chase Brown was in a perfect situation. It was a perfect storm of things that led to him being the number one guy in Cincinnati. Doesn't mean that I would prefer him over Garrett Wilson. And James Conner is just the guy I don't really get excited about. Now we get to so those are guys that scored close on just underneath 215 points this season. Now we get into guys
Mhm.
who scored above 215. Garrett Wilson or CeeDee Lamb.
You're really asking me that question?
Yeah, yeah. Come on.
You know I have a little bit of bias. You know I have a little bit of bias,
Just
man.
a tad, yeah. The only Virginia person I know that roots for the Dallas Cowboys for some odd reason, and Notre Dame. So why are we even here? Well, it's been fun talking to you.
Yeah.
See you later. I don't talk. I don't deal with Notre Dame fans. So anyway, especially the Cowboy fans who
Um,
are Notre Dame fans. But yeah, CeeDee Lamb,
yeah,
right? That's the obvious choice.
yeah,
CeeDee Lamb.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Alvin
but like the
Kamara, Jonathan Taylor. How about those guys? Any of those over Garrett Wilson?
in a vacuum, still no, but I like the fact that Kamara in like if all things are good, Kamara is about one of the most diverse backs that you could probably ask for. So he can, would have been similar to like Austin Eckler a couple years back, where the dude doesn't necessarily have to rush for a lot, but he'll get his numbers and everything. Still taking Wilson.
And just to move things quickly here, because now this is top 15 territory up here with CeeDee Lamb, Jonathan Taylor, Alvin Kamara. This is just based on production for the entirety of the season. The rest of the list is Kyrie Williams, Devon Achane, Josh Jacobs, St. Brown, and James Cook. And that's before we get to the one, two, three, four, five. Before we get to the top six, I'm sorry. I think Garrett Wilson is better than all those players. You can make a case, 1v1, Amon-Ra St. Brown versus Garrett Wilson would be the one that stumps me a little bit. But in a vacuum,
Mhm.
I'm still taking Garrett Wilson. And now you get to top six category. You got Bijan Robinson, Justin Jefferson, Jahmyr Gibbs, Derrick Henry, Jamar Chase, and Saquon Barkley. And I think seventh, being the seventh best player in terms of fantasy, is a title I'm comfortable with when it comes to Garrett Wilson in a
Mhm.
vacuum.
Yeah.
If he's the no undisputed number one guy with a serviceable number two wide receiver on the one side, a really good tight. Let's say he's the who's a good example that let's say he's on the Bengals instead of Jamar Chase,
And you got
right?
T.
Joe
Higgins right
Burrow,
there.
T. Higgins,
Yeah.
Chase Brown. Yeah, I still believe that Garrett Wilson will get his numbers and sniff at like a top six finish if all things go
Mhm.
well for him in a vacuum. But unfortunately, he plays for a bad team with the Jets, who acquired a guy in Davante Adams, who have a quarterback who has a gimpy leg, and on a defensive team that just kind of crumbled up at the end. I mean, remember the
Mhm.
defense, Jets defense was supposed to be uh, the what do you call it? Just the standard at one point. That
Yeah.
fell apart. Horrible ownership, just a mess of a franchise, and yet they have a guy
Did
like Garrett
you?
Wilson, and
Mhm.
they're ruining him.
Yeah. But did
And
you hear where what's his name? Woody Johnson would he I can't remember which player it was that he didn't want to get, but it was because he was taking advice from his kid over Madden ratings.
yeah, I actually posted that in our football group
Oh
on
yeah,
Facebook,
yeah,
Football
yeah.
Life, and not surprised, not surprised. I heard things about Woody Johnson, but I figured, well, it can't be that bad. I'm a Bears fan, so how bad can this be? Sure enough, it's as bad as I could ever imagine, and I can see why the Jets are a sorry ass franchise. Speaking of sorry ass franchises, let's go to your team. I'm joking.
Oh
Sorry, I
man.
couldn't help myself there. But we talked about Joe Mixon. He was your rock. I mean, we talked about him finishing as a top 15 player, but like I mentioned before, a combination of C.J. Stroud, Joe Mixon, Tank Dell probably was your undertaking. Yeah, trusting C.J. Stroud to be your quarterback one. He averaged nine and a
Hmm.
half points per game this year. Did you just leave him out there for the rest of the year and just went with it? Oh, you also had Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah,
Oof.
I did take Trevor Lawrence for a couple weeks, and then I feel like I just went with it. I had to. I don't. I didn't really think that things were going to get any better after it started off so terrible.
Yeah,
So I was like,
I guess I should start this
let
whole
me go for it.
I guess I should start this whole spiel off by saying you were the one of one, and you did draft Christian McCaffrey, and unfortunately your season went sour as soon, with the
About as soon
injury.
as it started.
Yeah, as
Yeah.
soon as it started. Yeah, well, I mean, I was trying to. Well, I guess we drafted in September, so there was already rumors that he may not have been ready for this year. But on other episodes of this podcast, I did say, hey, you give me the 1.1 pick, the first pick overall, I'm getting Jamar Chase, and if not him, then I'm considering Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb. I'm not drafting Christian McCaffrey, and people are looking at me like I'm an idiot or I'm crazy. But that would be my strategy. Like,
Mhm.
no, there seems to be a curse with the consensus number one pick every single year. Every single year, there's something that goes wrong, and it affects the 1.1 pick. So if you're gonna give me that top spot,
Mhm.
and I know that, and more than likely something bad is gonna happen with the consensus number one pick overall, then I might as well just follow my gut and build my franchise if I were like a real GM and say, yeah, I think
Mhm.
I'm going to go with Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson, one of those two guys, maybe CeeDee Lamb, maybe Garrett
Mhm.
Wilson, maybe Jonathan Taylor, maybe Saquon Barkley, but I'm sorry, I'm taking Jamar Chase, and
Mhm.
especially in a PPR league because I just don't know what's going to happen and it's usually a running back who's the consensus number one pick every single damn season. And you had a chance to salvage your year with Joe Mixon and Tony Pollard. They both averaged over 10 points per game. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, your wide receivers also went down the crapper too. I know
Yeah.
Tank Dell was hurt, but
The
Chris
the
Olave
other
not living
one,
up to expectations that hurt a lot. Go
mhm.
ahead.
But I was gonna say the only two that actually really did much for me were Jordan Addison and Jerry Judy.
Yeah,
And I had Judy on the bench for like half the year because I was hoping that like Tank Dell before he got hurt would have actually kind of turned the season around, and I should have just went with my gut and put Judy in the lineup and just went with it.
yeah. And then the Broncos defense, I mean, that was a savvy move on your part, the number one defense. So there's opportunity for you to keep improving, but unfortunately, it just wasn't there.
Hmm.
And this is why I don't emphasize quarterbacks. And you drafted two quarterbacks, but you ended up having no quarterbacks to lean heavily on.
Pretty much.
Um, and then yeah, you got the Christian McCaffrey does hurt, but you still found a way to kind of put your running back situation in a respectable status. And then you did have Jerry Judy, but like you said, that those are just uh, fantasy managerial decisions that were not properly made at the time. But who knows?
Hmm.
Maybe if you Jerry Judy is starting for your team every single week, maybe we're talking about you making a late season comeback or whatever. But because it is possible. I
Hmm.
mean, I once started a year 0-5, and I won all the games after that, and I won the championship after starting 0-5. So it is possible. It's not over till it's over. You play to win the game. But yeah, the
Hmm.
third worst total point differential it looks like. Yeah, third worst total point differential.
Unfortunately,
How did you end up scoring on the for total points for? Yeah, eighth.
107.4, which was, I guess, okay enough.
Yeah, total points for was eighth overall. So
Hmm.
there was chances for you. I mean, the eighth. It's not as bad as not like the other teams we talked about, and it
Hmm.
is possible, but you need a lot of luck though. And I forgot how many
Yeah.
divisions are we in? Are we in like in two divisions or three divisions?
I think we have like, do we have, I think we have three.
Yeah, and that's the thing I hate about fantasy football. But wait a minute, no, this thing is showing that it was just one big division.
On
Wait, let
the
me
app,
see.
it says that there was
Okay, I
three.
got it. I see it. My bad. Yeah, you're right. Three divisions. Next year we're gonna do four divisions, right? No, three divisions. And well, I want to say that maybe James might have played on an easy division. No, he played against three winning teams, but those winning teams were pretty much feeding off Seth's team, who ended up in dead last place. So it's hard to
Hmm.
tell where the disconnect is, where it starts and where it begins. But James scored less points than you did, but he also didn't see a lot of
Gave
points
up the
against him.
least amount.
That's
Yeah.
crazy to think on a tough division. So yeah, if anybody was lucky, it was him this year. But we'll see if we can get to his team eventually. Um, any other last words about your team before we move on there, Alex?
Uh, injury bug, injury bug, injury bug. It felt like every week I was taking people and either putting them on the bench or on IR. And that was just like week after week after week. Kind of felt like how my fantasy basketball league started last year with the um, the CBS league, and I had like Jamal Murray getting hurt and all that stuff, and it took like 7 weeks to finally put anything together. But yeah, I need to not be bad luck Alex. Just need to
Yeah,
just need to find the people that will stay consistently healthy but have
yeah.
enough upside so that that I don't have to make as many safe picks and then just settle for whatever happens. So yeah, I think I I need to probably not uh, draft the consensus number one guy and then use waivers a little bit better. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's kind of a little, you know, like you mentioned, there's certain things that are like there's a certain amount of luck involved, and you got to have certain things just kind of pop up where you can take advantage of it.
Moving on to Robert's team. He's the commissioner of my fantasy points baseball league. Also finished 6-8 in the regular season. Scored, it looks like, the second least amount of points. Um, so n Huge negative point differential in terms of the total point differential. Um,
Mm,
and James Cook was his best player. Excuse me, but I think his team was done when he drafted Patrick Mahomes super early. He drafted Brandon Aubrey super early, and he drafted the Dallas Cowboys. He was the first person that drafted a defensive team, if I remember correctly, the Dallas Cowboys.
and drafted a kicker first out of everybody.
Yeah. He's a trendsetter, right? But I knew that his season was over once he did that. You know, a Cowboy fans gonna be Cowboy fans, I guess. But yeah, so aside from that, I mean, when James Cook is your best player, that's usually a red flag. But he also had Amon-Ra St. Brown, which I'm not gonna question that one. But
Mm,
and DJ Moore, but you know, DJ Moore, it took him a while to get his season going. Having to play with a rookie quarterback there. He finished the year off with Devontae Wicks, which Dontavian Wicks, sorry about that, which is
mm,
always trusting any Packers wide receiver because they're so loaded at that position is always an adventure. And again,
mm.
let's draft the Cowboys tight end because he's on the Cowboys. He averaged 5 points this season. Jake Ferguson did. Oh, and
Who?
he must have picked up Jalen Tolbert as well. Which, yeah, this is what happens when you do. This is the I'm not even gonna say that he stacked the Cowboys, but this is just what happens when you rely too much on your homer picks. This is why I always
Mm,
discourage people from doing these homer picks. Other than that, I mean, he also had Aaron Rodgers, which that was a disaster. Keon Coleman, which probably not the rookie wide receiver to draft this year.
mm,
Brian Robinson Jr., who I don't know, I still don't know what to make of him. I don't look. I mean, it's a boring team. This is a really boring team with a lot of mistakes done. I don't want to deal too much on this team because it's just so bad to look at. But let's move
mm,
on to my friend Kerry, who always brings the goods. But yeah, there's a lot of luck involved with this team as well this year. He scored 1,606 points, which is has to be the lowest among the playoff teams. I would have to
mm.
think, at least
And
on
his
this
point
list.
differential was barely above breaking even.
Yeah,
Wait,
6.3 point differential, zero point 0.4 average point differential, and Divine
mm,
Achane at 14.9 points a game was his best player. I mean, this is starting to look like his fantasy baseball team. All luck, no substance. Yeah, I said it. He's a
mm.
fraud. I hate playing against him. If you could tell, I've been playing against him for almost a decade, and I don't like when he wins. I hate losing to him, and this is basically his teams. All luck, no substance.
Yeah,
And I tell that to
uh,
his face every time I see him. Man, you're like the luckiest motherfucker I know, man.
yeah.
Seriously, no, it's all love.
I see.
It's one of my better friends here. Go ahead.
Yeah, I see it with A Chain. That's actually on the list. Second worst average point total. So I'm like, did he just have a bunch of really average like total points amongst his team? Because he went 8-6, was in the playoffs, and did like I assume did a like I guess okay enough. I can't remember who won what matchups, but to have 14.9 leading your team and you're still kind of in it. Like we talked about with Angel with Brian Thomas 14.6, but how would like I'm kind of curious to know, trying to look back on it, how the roster construction and what those people were putting up per week was different than Angel's team.
So this is the opposite, right? This is the opposite of Angel's team, where Steve does a good job of controlling what he can't control. We talked
Mm-hmm.
about before the show the random variances that happens in fantasy sports, and that's the one thing I learned about fantasy football this year, that it's a lot more random variables to consider than I ever thought so before in my life. Because I know
Mm-hmm.
baseball has a lot of random variances that you can't control for. Uh, and then for basketball, I think you can control a little bit more of it because, it boils down to minutes. How many minutes are you getting? The more minutes you get, the more
Mm-hmm.
productive you should be. Especially when in a league like ours, in that fantasy basketball league. And well, I don't know much about fantasy hockey, so who cares? Uh, but
Mm-hmm.
football, that's the one thing I learned is that there's a lot more variance than I remembered. But that's the one thing I'll give him credit for. I mean, he's a really good fantasy player. Steven is like he
Mm.
any sport. I don't know if he does basketball or hockey, but definitely football and baseball. He's always competing. He's always has a winning record. And again, even in our points league, where I see that I'm the one crying. Why everybody I play is scoring like 339 points against me, which is a really high score. And then I see Steven winning these 276 to 267 games every single week. And I can scream, that's just luck, 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 lucky, lucky. Let me have your schedule. Let me play your division, and my team would be killing it every single week. But at a certain point, it's the same thing we wonder about Angel. At a certain point, like, where are the results? It can't all just be bad
Mm.
luck. What are you doing that, Steve is able to be successful and you're not? Why are we listening
Yeah.
to your podcast, Felipe? You don't know shit about what you're talking about. Anyway, but that's that's the thing, right? Although in this league, you can't question, you're looking at the second highest leading score here, uh, with yours truly. So, but yeah, going to his team really quick. Devon H. Put it this way with Steve's team, he wasn't relying everything on Devon Achan.
Mm.
It was like what's the old saying? The whole is better than the individual parts. He was
Yeah,
getting
yeah.
dink and dunk production, for lack of a better term. He was just getting consistent production across. It may have been low floor, but he was getting it. Like, he was getting production from everybody that he would put into his lineup. CeeDee Lamb averaged 14 and a half points. Remember, it's Achan 14.9, Lamb 14.5, Puka Nakua 14.4, Sam Laporta 9, which Laporta had a
Mm.
down year, but guess what? Uh, Laporta is notorious, for just exploding on any given week, which he
Mm.
has done the last 3 weeks. Although you could say 15, 12, and 14 and a half points isn't much. But if your tight end is scoring double digits, you'll take that as a win. He also has
Mm.
Cade Otton, which I forgot what
Mm.
his backstory was and why he kind of came into the week 7 through 9. He kind of exploded onto the scene there. And oh my God, week 7, 8, and 9, he was in double digit targets.
Oh.
So Baker Mayfield must have loved what he has seen. Eventually,
Mm.
the league figured him out, and he was a non-issue afterwards.
Mm.
Um, and then he also he what I'm trying to figure out what else did he do? He had a Steelers defense, averaging 14.8 points, which
Mm.
again, that's the problem with this defenses. But yeah, when you have a defense like that, it kind of hides a lot of your team's deficiencies,
Mm.
right? Other
Who
than
did he have
that,
at quarterback?
see, that's the thing. He didn't depend on one quarterback. He did the thing that I did was
Mm.
you just play the matchups. He had Matthew Stafford, Dak Prescott, who ended up on IR,
Mm.
and Anthony Richardson, who
Oh.
it's not the best trio of quarterbacks, but if you're just playing the matchups every week, then yeah, you can make you can you can play the best matchup available. So,
Mm.
and you say what you will about Anthony Richardson, but he scored 17.6 points against the Titans in week 16, 18.6 points against the Patriots in week 13, and 22 points against the Jets. So, if the matchup is there, he took advantage
Yeah,
of it,
right, thinking of it. Yeah.
which that's the thing I always preach. Yeah, you say what you will about Richardson, he sucks, but and Stafford is old and gimpy, but you know what? If the matchup's right, you got to play him. You got to play
Mm.
him. Week 12 against the Eagles, although that's not a good matchup. Maybe that's not a good example. But week 11 against the Patriots, Matthew Stafford, 31 points. Like, they turned back the clock. Calvin Johnson was on the team that week. Uh, 16 points against the Eagles, but that's a tough defense. I don't think I would have played against Stafford against the Eagles. I would have definitely played Stafford against the Saints. Double digits there, 14 points. I wouldn't have played against the Bills, but he held his own 17 points against the Bills at home.
Not bad.
Uh, so yeah, Stafford's a weird one because matchups that you wouldn't want to play him, like you wouldn't want to play Stafford against the Vikings. Stafford scored 23 points against
Mm.
a supposed to be tough Vikings defense. What did Dak do before he got hurt? Yeah, say what you will about Dak. 24 points against the Ravens in week 3, 20 points against the Giants in week 4, which, yeah, you're definitely starting Dak in week 4 against the Giants. And then it all went to hell after that. But
Mm-hmm.
at one point, but you got options. You're not depending on one guy. You have options. You
Mm-hmm.
can play the matchups, and he does a really good job. As far as I've always known him, as long as I've ever known him, he's always done a really good job of just figuring out the matchups to play. All right, so that's carried. All right, that's enough about him, man. There's too many compliments to the guy. Uh, let's move on to Tyler. We still got a few more teams to go, so I'll try to speed it up. Tyler, he's the guy I lost to in the third place game.
Mm-hmm.
So like I said, he was one of the guys that I mentioned. He's a big Eagles fan, so I'm pretty sure he's having the time of his life right now. Uh, let's see, Tyler scored a respectable amount of points, respectable total point differential, 2 point average point differential, which that's about average. But again,
Mm-hmm.
you can get away with that with those small margins of victory when you have Lamar Jackson. I think that's the best player in this league in terms of fantasy points per game, 23.8.
23.8.
So I think
Mm-hmm.
this is the first time. Oh, well, Jalen Hurts, but we're not going to count Seth's team because he wasn't paying attention to all of it. But this is the first time after talking about all these bad teams, this is the first instance where we actually see a winning team and the quarterback being the best player on that said team. So this is gonna become a trend where the quarterback ends up being the best player on the team, which is ironic because people were accusing me of setting the league up where it was very quarterback unfriendly,
Mm-hmm.
and you have the next three teams, their best players were the quarterbacks. So make it make sense. Aside from that, Bijan Robinson. Remember Bijan Robinson? Like, oh man, what a bust he was, right? First round bust. He sucks. Bijan Robinson, he's ass. Uh, yeah.
They
Are, are, tell me.
sure
Let me tell
we'll
Alex. Let me
go
ask
with
you a question.
that.
Let me ask you a question. And I tried my damnedest in my other league to trade for the guy, and no, and the guy would not budge at all. And I thought I was giving up some really good players at that time, but the guy did not budge at all. But let me ask you, Alex, is Bijan Robinson a bust at this point of the season?
I personally, I've never viewed him as a bust in general.
Yeah.
I just know Atlanta the last couple of years has been a really funky situation to be in where they have some really talented players and people. I mean, Bijan has been putting up some pretty respectable numbers regardless, but like they've been a little dysfunctional as far as coaching and trying to get game plans set up and I don't know. It's and I know you're gonna probably crap on me for this, and it's mainly because this guy has a high ceiling and just can't catch the ball. But like Kyle Pitts in a perfect world should be catching the ball like almost every down. The
I actually agree
dude's
with that, son. I actually agree with that,
talent
son.
wise is that good where if you're not handing the ball off to Bijan, the ball should either be going to Pitts or Drake London, and Pitts should be getting like double digit targets, double digit catches, probably almost routinely. But they've refused, and part of it is because Pitts has dropped the ball a lot, but Atlanta's kind of at times really refused to try to go to him, and it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with that situation. I don't watch enough Falcons games to figure out what's wrong there. I just know that Pitts does not get any opportunities, doesn't get any
Mm-hmm.
production, and but you know what? It's good for a guy like me because I'm always looking for those bargain tight ends. Although if we switch to a two tight end system next year, then I think Pitts's value goes up just because you have
Yeah,
to. It has to. But if it's just a single tight end league, that's good for
no.
me because I'm gonna get Pitts later than usual while everybody
Mm-hmm.
scrambles for tight ends. I'm just going to wait for Pitts to be available, and I'm going to get him as a number 12, number 11 tight end in the league. And I'll live and die with that. It costs me nothing to get. It's a
Mm-hmm.
free tight end for as far as I'm concerned. And oh, Felipe, you risk your chances of leaving yourself open to Pitts being really bad, and now you're chasing tight ends off waiver wire, which is always an adventure. I agree with that sentiment, but there's ways to do this. You play your cards right.
Mhm.
You pay attention to some of the potential rookie tight ends. Obviously younger the better. Hell, some of the second year tight ends for next season, they're gonna be slept on too because
Mhm.
they didn't do anything in the rookie season, but they put their work in year one. The team is gonna open things up for them in year two, theoretically speaking. And again, this is assuming that progress is linear, which we know it's not. But if in a perfect scenario, now you have a list of tight ends in the top 20, top 25, maybe if you want to reach that far,
Mhm.
who are rookies or second year or even third year guys who are being slept on.
Mhm.
So that's another way of putting it. I mean, there's ways to go about this. It's just that people like, oh, I don't want to deal with that. I'm just gonna draft Mark Andrews in the third round or in the fifth round or sixth round or whatever, and then be
Mhm.
miserable the rest of the season. I mean, what was the number one thing that people were complaining about, uh, like in the first half in our chat? My tight end sucks. Really, my tight end is
Oh
awesome,
yeah,
and I picked them up really
yeah.
late. Brock Bowers,
Hey,
MVP.
and that was someone that I was wanting to draft before you just went ahead and crushed my dreams.
Hey, don't blame me. Blame the guy who picked up Kyle Pitts. I was ready to draft Kyle Pitts, but he drafted the other dude drafted him earlier than I wanted him. And I go, all right, well, F
Mhm.
it. I'm just gonna get Brock Bowers. I always get Brock Bowers or Kyle Pitts in every mock draft, and I definitely got Brock Bowers in my other league, so I'm just getting him in this league. And sure
Mhm.
enough, I ended up getting the number one tight end, and all it did was, well, he was like tight end number 12 or 13 or some crazy stuff like that in the draft.
And
So,
you waited until what, like, I don't even remember what round you picked them in, but it was like almost the very end of the draft, and you're like, all right, I'll just go ahead and do it.
well, you know what? Now we got to look into it. If we're gonna do victory laps, let's do the victory laps right. It wasn't near the end of the draft. Well, maybe it was. I don't remember, but let's find out. Because not only, and I'm actually gonna share this. I'm on the other screen right now, but I'm actually gonna share this. All right, it's gonna be in small letters. Let me see how big I can make the. That's good. So what we're gonna do here, Alex, we're gonna search by
Mhm.
TE, right? Which is there another way to do this? Maybe comma space TE. There you go. So Kelsey, number one. Laporta, number two. Mark Andrews, number three. These guys went before the fourth round. And all of these owners who got these three players, Steve, I think that's Rahil's team, and Seth, all they did was complain about how much the tight ends suck. Well, don't draft tight ends early. Four,
Mhm.
Kittle. Five, McBride. Number six, Dalton Kincaid. Number seven, even Evan Ingram. Number eight, David Njoku. Number nine, Kyle Pitts at round eight. James Pino's got him because of course James Pino's got him. James Pino steals all my players every year. What number was that? Number nine, Jake Ferguson, right? Are we number
Yeah.
nine? Number 10.
Mhm.
Oh, okay, either way, double digits. The 10th tight end pick, Brock Bowers in the 10th round. And then Dallas Goddard goes after him. So
Mhm.
and then number 12 is TJ Hawkinson. I mean, shoot, dude, if I really wanted to, I could have gone back to back tight ends in the ninth and 10th round if I really wanted to with TJ and Brock Bowers, and I would have been happy with that. So it is possible to get creative at tight end. Oh, you're telling me that Brock Bowers and TJ Hawkinson on the same team is not a possibility? Okay, let's move on then. Let's say pair Brock Bowers with Pat Vermuth, which I was ready to do anyway.
Mhm.
I know Vermuth is up there in age and he hasn't really done much, but come on, the guy's like 6'8". He's a perfect goal line target. One of these years he's gonna get it right, okay? One of these years. I do love Cole Kmet too. I don't know what they were thinking about this year, but hopefully he gets more run next year because when Cole Kmet is on, I mean, we were expecting him to be Caleb Williams' security blanket, so we're hoping.
Mhm.
But yeah, we were hoping that this 21 and a half points against the Jaguars, we were really hoping that was going to be the standard or not the standard, but
Close to it.
I mean, there's
Yeah.
potential that he can get these explosive games, right? 20 against the Colts,
Mhm.
21 against the Jaguars, and he didn't do anything much of the rest of the season, but these are some tough defensive matchups. And the Bears defense just went down to crappers, so he suffered for it as well. But I still hold out hope for Cole Kmet. What did Pat
Mhm.
Freiermuth do this year? It's funny. We're talking about tight end, but I really wanted to ask you about running back for next season. So that's pretty funny that we ended up just talking about tight end. Okay, so Freiermuth, Low, low floor. I'm sorry, low floor, low ceiling. But he'll go on a stretch where he's, averaging 15, 11, or 9 points on a
Mm.
game, which you'll take from your tight end. Other than that, it's just mid. But again, he's 6'8". Isn't he like 6'8" or something? Isn't he like a big target? I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
It's
dude is really, really big, and I would, I guess, uh, having a low floor and a low ceiling could be a risk that someone could be willing to take. But like you said, there's weeks that when he's on, he puts up really, really good numbers, and you can't be mad at that. It's
right.
You would hope that it'd be a bit more consistent, but that's something that's like a risk that you're going to take if you're one to get him.
I'm just still kind of looking to see other tight ends that are available, right? And it's pretty bad. I'll admit it. It's pretty bad. So, but it is possible. It's not, you just gotta like, at that, if you're gonna go this route, you gotta do your research, right? You just can't like
Mhm.
willy-nilly go in there and if you're in a high stakes league anyway, you're already doing research as it is right now. Who was it like,
Mhm.
and then Benson, I think he was a rookie this year, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, he didn't do much of anything, but I think that this was his rookie year, right? Benson,
I think so.
I'll double check. So go into complete stats here, and then we'll move on. But it is possible. I know you guys are looking at me like, nah, that's too risky. I'm just gonna go get Mark Andrews next year. Okay, have fun with that. Have fun being miserable all year long. Every year, nothing but miserable Mark Andrews fans out there, and I love it. Yeah, this is his rookie year, bro. This guy came in with a lot of with a lot of talks about high ceiling. So
Mhm.
I know tight ends, and that's what I'm talking about. These tight ends take longer to develop, but next year I'm hoping that it's his year, right, so to speak, that he put in the work. Look at this, 6'4", 247 pounds, second round pick. So the draft capital is there, the size is there. It
Mhm.
just, I don't know, maybe he needs more reps in practice. He's gonna develop. He's gonna, improvements are gonna be made on the offseason. I don't know. But Ben Sinnott might be a guy you look into next year and say, if you're not tight end, if you're drafting two tight ends, whether you're in a two tight end league or just looking for a backup,
Mhm.
I need a Kyle Pitts backup. I might consider Ben Sinnott next year. We'll see. So yeah, man, have fun with it, man. Be creative. Just it doesn't have to be, oh, I got to get Mark Andrews and I'll be miserable the rest of the
Yeah,
season.
yeah. I mean, it's one of those situations where it's kind of like, do you do you want to just have the very, very safe pick? And so, like you mentioned, do you want to just have the safe pick, or are you willing to take a little bit of a risk? And sometimes it can turn out really, really great where you get a guy that just like explodes during the year, or you just live with the fact that you took a risk and it didn't work out.
Because the Mark Andrew fans will tell me, well, okay, well, you can deny the numbers. I mean, these are some double digit points early on when I was saying that people were complaining about him. And then he comes back with 3 points. Oh, well, the next week against the Bengals, he got 15. Yeah, and then he comes back with 3 points against the Steelers. But 12 and a half and 15. And then the double digits are not there. Well, I'll give him credit for this one, though. During the fantasy playoffs, he was a very dependable tight end. Yay.
Mhm.
I'm still taking Brock Bowers. I'm not changing anything about my approach.
Yeah.
Because this is crap. This probably costs you 5 games, 5 losses right here.
Mhm.
Yeah, 5 games of single digit production where he's barely getting 5 targets per game early on in the
That
year.
that is crap.
It's crap. And then
That
this
is
one against the
absolute crap.
Giants, he only got 2 targets. Somehow he got 9 points, so that's more luck than good. Oh, because he scored a touchdown. Yay.
Mhm.
Touchdown dependent tight end in the fourth round. Good job, guys. I'm sure you're really proud of yourselves. I do love San Laporta. Not just the price is too high for me, man. I can't do it.
Mhm.
Not when you have running backs and wide receivers to fill out. But I know Laporta, he's the goods, but maybe his stock will drop next season. But yeah, he too got off to a very slow start.
It felt like there was a lot of players that uh should be very dependable or had really high ceilings. Not even just tight end, but some receivers and backs that just had a very sluggish start. And that's probably why the chat was filled with a ton of people complaining about, oh, well, my guy's not producing. My guy can't get any points, blah, 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 blah.
Oh, that's a shame.
And yeah, it is, but you know, that's, hey, it's, it's all a gamble, right?
No, don't look at me,
Either
man.
you
I
take
drafted
it.
Brock Bowers like everybody
No, I
should
mean,
have.
like, yeah, I'm just, yeah, but I'm not necessarily saying like tight end in particular. I was seeing some players, backs and receivers just like not do anything until about like halfway through the year,
Yeah, yeah,
and some of them should have been really good picks. Like in a perfect world, should have been really good picks, and then those guys just didn't show up, and you're like, what the heck is going on here? But then
yeah,
you look at like maybe the team they're on, the quarterback they have, the defenses they're playing, who or whatever. Maybe they're not getting targets, blah blah blah. And then you look back and you're like, maybe I shouldn't have made that pick,
yeah.
or
I'm
maybe I
looking at
should have.
Rashad White right now. I know I said like he kind of
Mhm,
came on at the end of the season. I must have I must have been thinking about this 2 game stretch against the Raiders and the Chargers because in the fantasy playoffs, in the semifinal and championship game, he did nothing for you. But
yeah.
Rashad White, as much as I regret drafting him in my other league, I mean he had some games, had some decent
Hmm.
games. But he too got off to a pretty slow start at the beginning of the year. It almost looked like the Buccaneers were ready to abandon him in both the passing
Hmm.
game and the running game. But then he come back with 26 points against a very tough Ravens defense. So who knows? But
Yeah.
yeah, it's been that kind of season for a lot of guys. This up and down.
Hmm.
Anyway,
Yeah.
the thing I want to talk to you about because we were talking about Bijan Robinson is the running back situation for next year. So we talked about Christian McCaffrey being one of one, right? Wait, that's not it.
Hmm.
This one being one of one and the risks that it involves in getting a guy like a running back at number one when they're so volatile from year to year. You don't know what to expect from them.
Hmm.
So obviously, we talked about a lot of these guys, and I think when you talked about these guys that I'm highlighting here, that's like the top 10, top 15. I would say that if anybody's gonna sneak back into the top five, it'd be Jonathan Taylor. I think
Hmm.
Kamara is. I say this every year about him, but I think next year we should be seeing a decline out of the guy just because of natural aging. I never liked
Yeah.
Kyrie Williams, Devon Achan. I don't know. I know that
Is it?
go ahead,
I was say with Kyron Williams, is it because he went to Notre Dame?
bro. I didn't even know he went to Notre Dame. I didn't know he went to Notre Dame. I don't know,
That's crazy.
but I
Uh,
know that a lot of the podcasts I listen to, they and a lot of the sheets a lot of the websites I read about, even in the mock drafts. It just seemed like Kyrie Williams was the prototypical my my job is at jeopardy if I have one really bad game because the backup is better. And now I don't know who the backup is. I forgot his name. I just know that I did get him in a lot of my mock drafts, and I think I got him in
mm,
both of my leagues. What's his name? Brown something, Cole Brown. Help me out. You're a
gosh,
better football fan than I am, I guess. But oh, what the hell's his name? Wait, do I have maybe I have him in my watch list still. Where's the watch list? Oh, let's find
I'm
out.
trying to look up the roster real quick.
Nope. Cam Akers. No, not Cam Akers. That was a while back ago.
Hmm.
Okay, well, look that up. But I guess the question was, oh, I still say Jonathan Taylor. If anybody's going to sneak back into the top five, it'd be Jonathan Taylor. Devon Achane, I
Hmm.
think the Dolphins, they just have way too many weapons and then way too many running backs that they like to use. This year was more like of an anomaly just because of all the injuries. Uh,
Hmm.
I don't see Devon Achane breaking into the top five. I don't, maybe Josh
Yeah,
Jacobs,
because
but
he's I think we even might have been when the draft podcast, like when he had that at the beginning of the year, there was talk about like that A Chain is kind of just like pretty up and down. Like
Mm.
he'll put up like weeks of like 20, and then you'll have weeks of like five, and they're like back to back weeks.
Yeah, and I mean he's fast, but from what I understand, he's also kind of small. I'll double check that.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's the Dolphins. It's the Mike Shanahan tree. They don't believe in running backs unless it's Christian McCaffrey. Apparently, then that's okay. But I mean, the Mike Shanahan tree, Kyle Shanahan, and now Mike
Mhm.
McDaniel. They love using multiple running backs.
Yeah. But the Rams' other running back is Blake Corum.
That's who it was. Yes.
Yeah.
So it was more my belief in Blake Corum than it was about Kyrie Williams. I didn't know he went to Notre Dame, but now I have another reason why I don't like him. Although I do like Cole Kmet though. So that
Mhm.
I don't know about Josh Jacobs breaking into the top five. I think maybe we'll see a dip in him, especially because the Packers also have a lot of good running backs on the roster. They just
Yeah.
couldn't stay healthy. So we'll see. I don't believe in James Cook. I was never a James Cook believer. So we'll see what he does next year. Every year he proves me wrong. He does enough to be
Mhm.
relevant, but I
Yeah.
never draft James Cook. It's just a boring draft pick. It's mid. It's bland. It does nothing for me. So the real meat and potatoes is who's the number one running back moving forward next year? Is it still Saquon Barkley? Do you take a chance on Derrick Henry? Is it Bijan? Does Bijan Robinson, after we just saw his numbers, does he take a major step forward in draft position next year? What's your thought on that,
Um, as a safe guess, I'm still would stick with
Christian McCaffrey?
Saquon or no, no. Come on, man. I would still stick with Saquon or Derrick Henry, but in a Atlanta would use Bijan a bit more, and he would be able to possibly sneak that far up. Uh, I don't know, just knowing that the Falcons have kind of misused their skill position players, I'm not entirely trusting that, and they they might prove me wrong. You know, they might actually really be productive with those types of guys.
Excuse me, sorry, I had to clear my throat there. Um, I mean, I've always been a big fan of Saquon Barkley, and
Mm-hmm.
back in, I remember telling my friend that if I were, and this was back when both him and OBJ were on the same team with the Giants, and I did say if I in a perfect world, if I had two players to start my franchise with, if he both of those guys right there. And
Mm-hmm.
he gave me so much crap for even thinking that. But like, no, man, I love Saquon Barkley. I think he's the guy. And actually, after I said that, he, knee injury number one, and then he got injured again, and he's playing with an awful Giants team. So it makes now he looks like he's washed. But once he went to the Eagles, I knew, oh yeah, he's about to break out. He's about to break out in a big way. But I mean, I didn't trust him enough to draft him this year.
Mm-hmm.
So I should have just stuck to my initial gut feeling from years ago, but obviously I went in different directions. I'm more of a believer in wide receivers than I am in running backs.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously Barkley's in the consensus number one pick next season. But man, I don't know. I might have to add Bijan Robinson into that mix, man. I might have to add him into that mix. If I have the number one pick next year, it's Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson. I think I might go with Bijan Robinson ahead of Saquon Barkley, as blasphemous as that sounds like. And maybe,
Yeah.
oh, Felipe, you're overthinking it. Like, nah, bro, you gotta think about things like this because every year the consensus number one pick goes, something bad happens to them. It seems like every single
Mm-hmm.
season that happens. So if this outside the box thinking, if I have to draft a running back, I might just go with Bijan Robinson because the Falcons did a good job of keeping him fresh, and then after a
Mm-hmm.
while they figured out, hey, here's a novelty idea. Why don't we have our best player have the ball more often?
Yeah.
Imagine
Let's just
that.
hope. Let's just hope that for his sake and fantasy sake, that next year they think about that week one, not like halfway through the year.
That'd be great. That'd be fantastic. Well, we'll see what happens with Penix as the quarterback. Maybe they'll things will open more up on the offense because Cousins was very limited this year. But I mean, if he's so limited, then give the ball to Bijan. Damn it. Anyway, Derrick Henry, he's
That's one
proving
of
that
those
that's
like
not the case. That running backs still have um, value after they hit the age of 28, 29, 30 years old. But Derrick Henry is. Have you
the
seen what he has to do to keep his body at
I've
100%?
seen the videos.
The f-
I've seen his diet. I've
yeah.
seen his training videos,
At this
and yeah,
point, I have to ask, what is he
crazy.
allowing himself to eat at this point of his life? Because he is on a,
He
you
is
mentioned a
on
very restricted diet. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah he's on like pretty much like a no sugar diet at all. Like
Mm.
no, like nothing processed, nothing like anything. If it even looks remotely close to unhealthy, I'm like pretty sure the guy doesn't even look in the direction of that food.
Well, sorry, dude, but us poor people have to eat our instant mac and cheeses, okay? We don't have personal chefs, Derek. But yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's an interesting conversation. I'm
Be
pretty sure this is gonna,
220 something pounds and have that restrictive of diet and being out there putting up like 1,500 yards every season is pretty insane.
well, there's a reason why Noah won the championship this year, and I like to get to that eventually. But man, we just keep getting sidetracked on this conversation. Let's see, what we're talking about running backs. What about the rest of the flex position? Yeah, same guys. Barkley, Jamar Chase, there's Justin Jefferson, Bijan Robinson. So you guys better hope I don't get the number one pick because I might do some real damage next year. Hell, you better hope I don't get the top four pick because I will be happy getting any of these four guys, and everybody's gonna be screwed. I got my guy in the ninth pick overall anyway. So
Yeah,
Felipe
yeah.
gets his guy.
And
Felipe
he put
knows
up
something.
like and he put up 22.2 average
Jamar
and
Chase.
almost fell out of the first round.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, in the other league, Justin Jefferson also fell to like the number eight, number nine pick to me.
Hmm.
I mean, I don't know, man. It's just like the disrespect to these for these two players. Anyway, what was the team we were talking about? We were talking about Tyler's team to Infinity and
Yeah,
Bijan, right? So I'm sorry,
mhm.
Tyler, we didn't get a chance to talk much about your team, but you got Bijan Robinson and Lamar Jackson, Mike Evans still at this advanced age, still good. Terry McLaurin, we just talked about him. We talked about TJ Hawkinson when we were talking about tight ends. Um, it's a solid team, man. It's a really good team, and Lamar Jackson carried was at the center of it all.
Yeah.
So this looks like Steven's team if he had a good quarterback or a
Mhm.
superstar quarterback. But again, that brings up the point. At one point, do you draft these quarterbacks, right? Because consensus thought is you don't draft quarterbacks early, right? That
Yeah,
that
and and I made a bit of a mistake by taking Stroud in what the fourth round, but yeah, what was Jackson taking him like third? I think third round, if I
let's
remember
go
correctly.
back. Let's go back to the point. I said we weren't going to talk about the draft, but now we're talking about the draft. So this is so that's my fault. We keep getting distracted because I feel like this is going to be the last fantasy football episode of the year. It seems like, but you know what? Our curiosity, yeah, third round for Lamar Jackson. Our curiosities are getting the better of us. Lamar Jackson in the third round. Josh Allen in the third round. Who's the other guy you were asking about?
Um, I know I took Stroud in the fourth, I think, in back-to-back
Mah-
pick with Tank Dell.
Mahomes in the second round, by the way.
Mahomes in the second round, and Mahomes didn't have like a horrible year, but like by his standards, the numbers he put up were kind of like really mid, if I got to be fair and honest.
No, there a lot of
And,
disappointed
and
Mahomes.
this is and this is with the help of the refs, Chiefs fans.
If you're a Mahomes owner, you're highly disappointed. I mean, like our guy Robert, he could have had Nakua, he could have had Mike Evans. We just mentioned him. He could have,
Mhm,
well, Jalen Hurts in the second. Well, again, I think this guy's an Eagles fan, and I think he wasn't taking his league seriously. But Joe Mixon was also available. Uh,
mhm.
Lamar Jackson was the better quarterback. He was available. Wow, Drake London in the third round. Jesus
Yeah.
Christ.
Uh,
Man, this draft sucks. Anyway, maybe we're
yeah.
overthinking it. We're overthinking it too much. People are gonna make bad picks, and it's our job to make the good picks, right? CJ Stroud in the
Mhm.
fourth round, like you mentioned, and you went back to back. I like that record. Tank Dell in the fifth round, so that ended up hurting you.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, and mind you, This was supposed to be the league that punishes quarterbacks highly,
Mhm.
and it ended up
And
that
the
it, that
top
it
three teams had their best player being the quarterback.
yeah. So now it
Because
makes me think like, so what is
Rahil
the?
next, it had Joe Burrow.
I'm sorry, who?
Rahil?
Yeah, yes, that's right. Right. I know this because he I lost to the guy. But Justin Herbert, if I would have started Justin Herbert, I think I would have beaten Raheel. And
Mhm.
Herbert, even though his situation is pretty bad, it turns out that he's a really damn good quarterback, despite the fact that his coach doesn't want him to shine because he emphasizes the running game. And Justin
Mhm.
Herbert is not a mobile quarterback, but when he was allowed to cook,
Mhm.
he would post up some respectable numbers. And again, this league is supposed to punish quarterbacks, and it turns out that all it did was punish the pocket passer. Because if you're a running
Mhm.
quarterback, you flourish under the system with Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, and then Joe Burrow, who is not what I think about. Well, might as well talk about it. Let's go. We're never going to finish the show. We're just going to talk forever, right? Talk forever. Quarterbacks. How punishing was this league at quarterback? I think to myself. So there's our top three: Jackson, Allen, Burrow. Let's do it by. Do we want to do average or we want to do total?
Oh,
Let's do total. Let's do total.
yeah.
Jaden Daniels at number four. Again, a scrambling quarterback, right? We established that he's a scrambling quarterback.
Well, because what you don't make through passing, you can always find a way to make up with running, and that's kind of like years past, like a Austin Eckler at running back. If he doesn't run the ball a ton, he's always going to catch the ball, so you can trust that he's going to put up X amount of points.
By the
Now, granted,
way,
he's fallen off a little bit, but that's
really
kind
quick, I have to point this out, Alex, really quick. Sorry to interrupt you, but yeah, Joe Burrow, 202 rushing yards. Joe Burrow is sneaky like that. I've noticed that before and I
of.
forgot about that, but he will sneak in a couple hundred yards per season with his legs.
Yeah.
So maybe that's the trick, because then you got the real pocket pass like Jared Goff. He only got 56 yards rushing, but he finished one, two, three, four, five, sixth overall in this league. So pretty
Hmm.
darn good. Sam Darnold, 202 rushing yards. So maybe that's a secret. If your quarterback can finish over 200 yards rushing, you're good to go. Bo
Hmm.
Nix, who was a pleasant surprise, and shame on me for cutting him too soon. 383 yards, and his season. Imagine what he can do with a full season under his
Hmm.
belt. So even well then I complain about Justin Herbert not being mobile, but he got to 264 yards this season. But he only averaged 13.6 points per fantasy game.
Yeah.
So I don't know anymore. I don't know what the secret is anymore. I thought I had it all figured out, but I don't know.
Maybe the secret, and it's weird that in like a lot of other leagues, sometimes this can happen, is like the people that don't really think too much about stuff are the ones that find a way to win. They don't do all of their research. They just are like, all right, I'm just gonna take this dude.
Brother, this is the most research I've done for fantasy football. Me talking to you, because when I go into every like fantasy football is the sport I take the least seriously, and maybe that's the
Mhm.
reason why I keep finishing in fourth place. But I do a few mock drafts. I listen to a couple of podcasts before the draft, and then I draft my players. And again, like I talked about in our fantasy basketball, I don't think about it in terms of statistics because I'm the stats guy, right? I'm the analytics guy. I'm the guy
Mhm.
ruining sports. I'm the reason that sports are no fun anymore. But when it comes to fantasy basketball and especially fantasy football, it's all I just close my eyes and I envision, okay, can I see this guy? Why do I love Jamar Chase so much? Because if there's gonna be a wide receiver who will one day rack up 300 yards in one game, it's Jamar Chase.
Mhm.
It's just a perfect storm of Joe Burrow and great supporting cast and a defense that I'm not really scared of. So when you have a bad defense and a good offense, I mean, you get video game numbers, right? It's like a pinball
Just
machine,
be
like
putting up
points,
like
points, points, points.
30 points
Everybody
a
gets
week.
points. So it's just a perfect storm. Same thing why I like Chase Brown this year. It's just the perfect situation. And Chase Brown is better than Zach Moss. I believe Zach Moss was the free agent that they signed
Mhm.
earlier in the year. And I'm thinking, bro, who are you? Why are they trying to fool us, man? It's Chase Brown all the way. Catch the ball. He runs fast. He's punishing runner. get him the rock, and eventually the Bengals figured out, yeah, let's get him the rock. Let's stop pretending that because the rumors were that he couldn't block blitz, he couldn't pick up blitzes. Like, really, you're gonna stop your team success because of a little minute thing? Like, coach up the guy, and sure enough, as soon as he started getting more touches than Zach Moss, then he flourished, and my team flourished. So, anyway. So, like I said, I tried punishing quarterbacks, and quarterbacks just got their points anyway, whether they were pocket passers or they at least got to 300 yards rushing. Or
Mm-hmm.
in a case like Justin Herbert, he only averaged 13.6. So maybe this is where the complaint comes in. Yeah, he got a lot of points. Actually, that's not a lot of points. 217 fantasy points overall. He did worse than Kyler Murray, who I've been complaining about this whole time. But look at that, 264 rushing yards. So
What
I don't
were
know.
his passing numbers?
Huh?
What were his passing numbers? Herbert.
3,500 yards. Is
Not
that
bad. It could be more
Yeah,
with
21
the
touchdowns,
confidence.
only three interceptions. So in this league, I punish turnovers from quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
Three interceptions is pretty damn freaking good. So I'm hoping that another year under Harbaugh, they get to understand each other, and Harbaugh actually uses him like you should, like the high class vehicle that Justin Herbert is. Because look at this, he eventually did understand. Oh wow, I got a real stud on my hands. 25 points in week 8 against the Saints. 21 points against a very what's supposed to be a tough Browns defense on the road. And then 17,
Mm-hmm.
I know that 17, 18 is something that's like people look at that and that they're like, oh, that's nothing to brag about. But in this league, 17, 18 points from your quarterback, that's a godsend. I would gladly take
Mm-hmm.
it. And yeah, I mean, that's against the Ravens. That was a struggle. Against on the road against the Falcons, I don't know what happened there. Against the Chiefs, that's always a tough matchup because of, like you just said, they have to face the elements, a Chiefs
Mm-hmm.
special team, dynastic team, and the refs. Of course, you got to face the refs. And only only 11 points against the Buccaneers. That was a disappointing game. And then against
Mm-hmm.
a tough Broncos defense, he got 17 points again in the playoffs. Again, I could have won that game against Raheel if I would have started him. And then 24 big points against the Patriots on the road. Make it make sense. I don't get it anymore. But I guess it just goes to show how interchangeable quarterbacks can be, even in punishing leagues. Because
Mm-hmm.
if this was a much more friendly quarterback league, then instead of 217 points, maybe he's up to here like 250, 260 points. But so is everybody else.
Yeah.
Everybody else rises. So anyway, let's move on. We Harry's team, William H. Bonney. That I found out this year that was Billy the Kid's name. Harry was very. I think I beat him in our first round matchup of the playoffs, or I beat him in a game, and he kind of had like a. I gotta choose my words carefully here, but as a competitor myself, I know I know that I know when a guy sees red, and after he lost
Mm-hmm.
to me, he saw red in the playoffs, so he was not a happy camper, and he said, "Oh, you got lucky," and I go, "Hey, man," because I picked up the Falcons defense that week. And I told
Mm-hmm.
this to everybody. Hey, the Falcons defense was there for everybody to pick up. And I think the Falcons scored like 30 some odd points. Again, all the more reason to get rid of the the defensive and special teams, right? All the more
Mm-hmm.
reason to get rid of that stuff. But he got angry, and I go, oh yeah, and I don't think I started Justin Herbert that week, but I believe I went with and I'm trying to do two things at once here, but I believe I went with a rookie or some unknown quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and I do apologize for that. I'm trying to do way too many things at once here, but I'm on the other screen looking for that first round playoff matchup. Let's go ahead and show it to the class. Yeah, I did beat that's Harry's team I beat in the first round. 8 teams made the playoffs. He had Josh Allen scoring 36 points. Oh yeah, Devontae Adams 45 and a half points after people told me that he was washed.
Adams being washed is hilarious.
But I didn't realize he was over 30 years old. All I see is a productive wide receiver. No matter who the quarterback is, no matter what team he's on, he's just a very productive guy. Uh, and Harry's a Jets fan too, so you can only feel I can only feel the pain that he was feeling, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I had any sympathy for him losing against me, which I don't, but I kind of understand where he's coming from. Let's see here. Oh, I did start Justin Herbert. Yeah,
No, you
11.9
did.
points. Never mind. But and I lost. Najee Harris didn't do anything. Brock Bowers didn't do anything. But yeah, the Debo Samuel was disappointing in the second
That
half of the
man
year.
wanted that man wanted over $30 million, and as soon as he got that check cashed, he just walked out the building and said, "I'll see you later."
Oh, I thought you were talking about Brandon Ayuk, who pretty much got the same, who got like
Well,
a big contract. But I
they,
know he got hurt. I'm
they,
I'm I'm joking around here, but
I mean, they kind of both did in a sense, but man, Debo was complaining about not getting catches this year, and as soon as they'll throw him the ball, and then he'll like drop like the most like obvious catch, and you're like, bro, that's probably why people were going to complain about you making the money that you're making now.
Harry's
You
team
can't.
was led by John. I'm sorry, but we got to move on here. Harry's team got Josh Allen, Jonathan Taylor. These are guys we talked about. Oh, Jameer Gibbs. Yeah. Ooh, bro.
Um,
Talk about bad luck, man. This is the dream squad. Although his wide receivers are kind of lacking here. Yeah. So that was his downfall, was he didn't have good wide receivers, relatively speaking, of course. I mean, they were productive, but I mean, I don't trust Jamison Williams. Adam Thielen, he waited an entire year just to get Adam Thielen up and running.
and he
Jesus
was out for what,
Christ.
like half the season.
Yeah, pretty much. You've seen it on the screen. And then he came back after week 11 bye week, and oh my God, that's production right there. But still, I rather not trust in a guy like Adam Thielen.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about Trey McBride. He's really good. Bucky Irving, I guess he did take the mantle on the Bucks running back
Yeah,
situation, especially over Rashad White.
he
It's like
did.
Jesus Christ. I didn't realize how yeah. Lesson learned. Lesson learned. Rashad White is mid, huge mid.
Bucky Irvin is definitely their top guy next
RB
year. And
one.
if
Yeah.
and if Tampa does anything different, they're stupid.
Stephon Diggs went down, so I guess that's
Mm-hmm.
where it all went downhill for him. Brock Purdy and Josh Allen. Yeah, Josh Allen is the guy. So
Mm-hmm.
he almost got away with things with Josh Allen, a very good running back situation. He lost Diggs, but he made up for it in Ladd McConkey and Adam Thielen. Jameson Williams kind of breaking out this year. I still don't trust him, but if he's producing like this, then screw it. Go with it. Why not?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not drafting him next year, but also, when was the last time you saw two white wide receivers flourish like this on the same fantasy team? I don't remember. I don't remember. So oh man, Harry, I feel for you, man, but there's a reason why I ended up scoring the second most points in this league, bro. Raheel, that's the guy I lost to in the semifinal. Let's take a look at his team really quick as I uh jump on it. But Raheel, finished a little bit above average in terms of total point differential and average differential. Joe Burrow was his best player, so I could definitely see a situation where Joe Burrow is just carrying his team all season long.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I didn't realize that his team nickname was Health Inspector, but I called his team
Oh,
loading on my spreadsheet because of this stupid
that
cursor.
changed, I think, for the championship.
I'm sorry, what?
I think that the team name only changed
Okay.
the championship round.
And yeah, so Drake London was a thing this year.
Hmm.
Okay, I stand corrected. Drake London was a thing this year. Okay, but then, lots of peaks and valleys more than anything. So I still don't try. I'm kicking myself at Jackson Smith and Jigba because I drafted him in a lot of my mock drafts, but for some reason I struck out with him in the real drafts.
Hmm.
But yeah, I know that he was a fantasy savior of sorts. Then you got Jawan Jennings, who that's a good pickup. I mean, look at this. When he's the only guy in San Francisco, he puts up huge numbers,
Hmm.
and he put up some huge numbers against the Bears and the Seahawks in week
Oh, the poor
11
Bears.
and week 14 there. No, there's
The
Mark
poor
Andrews.
Bears are dangerous.
Keenan Allen averaging 10 points per game, which is really surprising. Brees Hall, So yeah. Oh, Amari Cooper was on the team as well. How do you do this year? Let's find out really quick. Yeah. Yeah, we're not drafting Amari Cooper next season, are we?
Mm,
Maybe, Mom, if we expand, maybe you have to. We'll see. But yeah, nothing screams out at you when you look at this team.
mm,
But like I said, like I predicted, it was going to be Joe Burrow and hope everybody else can catch up with Joe Burrow, and that's what happened against my team in the semifinal matchup.
mm.
Like, yeah, Joe
Yeah,
Burrow
he
had a hell
just
of a game.
peaked at the right time.
I'm sorry, what?
He just it looks like his with the makeup of his team, it kind of just peaked at the right time.
Yeah, yeah, and he posted decent numbers against the Browns in the semifinal game, and then in the
Mm,
championship game, he scored 33 points. So, Joe Burrow, man, Joe Burrow, he's the truth. Not gonna deny
mm,
it. And yeah, he's yeah. It's if it sounds like I'm not giving him too much credit to the team that beat me in the semifinal, it's because I mean this kid. You look at the overall scope of this team, and it's kind of underwhelming. But I'll give him credit. They all
mm,
peaked at the right time, so we'll give him his kudos. Next guy is Shane, who was probably the most underachieving team, but I think he kind of gave up as the season wore on. I think he might have paid attention like within the first month or so, and then kind of forgot about it or gave up on it. So I don't know.
mm,
I'm gonna have to ask, hey, are you gonna really play, or is this? Because I'm looking for
mm.
players here. There's a waiting list of people waiting to get into this league. So, but Jared
His
Goff,
best player is Saquon.
yeah, and you also got Aaron Jones, Justin Jefferson, Jalen Waddle, Malik
Mm,
Neighbors. Waddle was underwhelming this year, but Malik Neighbors and Justin Jefferson made for a hell of a 1-2 punch there.
mm,
Uh, and I mean, Jaden Daniels on the same team as the Jared Goff, so hell of a quarterback situation there. Other than that, I mean, he just looked like a team who kind of stopped paying attention
mm.
because this is a really good team. This is a better team than the last team that we saw with Rahil's team. And this is the
Yeah.
difference. Like, yeah, you could draft the best team, but if you're not paying attention, I mean, this isn't a best ball league, bro. If you're not paying attention, you're
Mm.
not gonna get the results.
Yeah, I mean, it just in general across the board in the league, that actually looks like a pretty solid squad, and it just like I said, maybe just didn't pay attention, or I, it, it's confusing that a team with some of that makeup wouldn't get more than 5 wins.
Next team up is my team. Like I said, second highest score of the team of the league. 149 point differential. My best player was Jamar Chase. We talked about it already at nauseum, but we're gonna talk about it one more time. Chase Brown, Isaac Guerrero, just because same thing with John Jennings. There was just nobody there for the 49ers, and he did,
Mm,
you know, Isaac Guerrero, I think he was just a rookie this year. We're gonna see
yeah.
what the 49ers do next year with the running back situation. Because when he was out there, he would produce in limited action. 16 and a half points against the Cowboys, 25 big points against the Bears, 11 points against the Lions
Mm,
um in the final game, in the third place game, I guess, for my team.
mm,
So 49ers have some decisions to be making here because it's kind of hard to deny that Guerrero might be a viable running back, and it might be time to consider splitting duties with Christian McCaffrey. I thought I had a hell of a wide receiver core. If I would have known that Deebo Samuel was going to play this bad, who knows what I would have done. But I mean, he got off to a good start, and then it just kind of fizzled out at the end. Hell, even
mm,
in the first round of the playoffs, he got 20 points. So,
mm,
like, what am I supposed to think here, right? I've obviously got Brock Bowers, the best tight end in fantasy. And I also got Najee Harris, which I was not a fan of that pick when I made it, but I felt like I needed a running back. And my number one rule is when you feel like you have to make a pick, that's when things start falling off for you. Let's see. Looking back now, knowing what we know now, was who should I have drafted instead of Najee Harris? We're gonna find out really quick. Let's see. George Pickens? No. David Montgomery? No. I guess Aaron Jones, but yeah, I probably should have drafted Aaron Jones. That would have been the smarter pick, I think. Let's find out.
Yeah.
Or
It,
Brian Robinson. I
it,
saw Brian Robinson. Go ahead.
it always when you feel like you have to make a pick, and I made a few mistakes with this too for this year's draft. But when you feel like you have to make the pick, that's the pick that you definitely should stay away from.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of Terry McLaurin. I got him in all my mock drafts and in my other league too. For some reason, I just decided that Najee Harris was the guy I had to make. I will give Najee Harris some credit here. When my team was in shambles, he just was always healthy, and he
Mm,
was guaranteed at least 15 touches at the very least. Of course, against the Eagles and the Ravens, that did not come to fruition, but those are some tough matchups. Actually, yeah, this is not a good. This is a very tough stretch to depend on a guy who is going to face against three very tough matchups: the Eagles, the Ravens, and the Chiefs
mm,
for your fantasy playoffs. So that was rough to deal with. Other than that, he was just safe floor guy, right? This is the epitome of safe floor guy. Low upside but
mm,
safe floor. And I could always count on him getting at least 15 touches per game. So I will give him credit. Solid but unspectacular pick. But yeah, Terry McLaurin was there, but McLaurin comes with his own baggage too. So
mm.
maybe Aaron Jones would have been the guy. I just saw his numbers. I'll see him again. Yeah, a little bit more boom out of Aaron Jones than anything. He definitely showed up during the playoffs a lot more than
Mm.
Najee Harris did. So maybe that would have been a better pick for me. But yeah, we could play these what if games. But yeah, the round seven picks were kind of weak as well. I didn't like any of those. So yeah, maybe Jackson Smith and Jibba in the eighth round. Anyway, this is let's move on then. But yeah, that would have been my one regret was that
Mm.
I ended up with Najee Harris. But again, Najee Harris was my rock. I'm proud that I drafted Chase Brown in all my leagues though, so I get to at least pat myself on the back there. Kenneth Walker, great when he was there, but he was hurt for a lot of the year. Like there was
Mm.
always a chance that he was not going to play on a week to week basis. So Kenneth Walker for next year, do you like him or no?
I had him in my other league, and yeah, he was pretty dependable when he played, but there was a few too many weeks where I hated having to wait until game day to find out if he was actually going to play, and
Yeah.
then there was weeks that he didn't, and I didn't find out until after the players were already locked in, and I'm like, crap, that's 0 points this week. So he stays healthy, yes, but we know running backs take a pretty big beating, and it seems like the league is slowly going back to using backs a little bit more.
Yes. Oh my God. That I guess that would be what would be your biggest surprise of the year. And for me, it's the return of the cowbell running back, which
Mm.
I was not expecting that whatsoever. But here we are. The more things change, the more they stay the same. Moving on to James's team, that's probably we talked about it before the show. That's easily the luckiest team in the league. Scored what was it the third no the fourth lowest amount of points this year,
But
right?
gave up the least.
And he also gave up the least amount. And we thought, oh, well, he must have had a soft schedule, but he was in a very tough division. Three teams in
Mm.
that division won games, but he also got to face this loser team here at number 12, Seth's team. I'm pretty sure Seth's a cool guy. The few times I've interacted with him in the chat, he's been a pretty funny, charming guy. But man, this is unacceptable,
Mm.
man. You got to do better than this. And we saw his
Mm.
team already, and I can't emphasize this enough. You got to do something. You got to pay attention. Same thing with Shane's team. Really good team. We might not be even talking about one of the five core guys in this league being in the semifinal game. We might be talking about Shane and Seth playing in the championship game, but they stopped trying, and these are the results. Meanwhile, a guy like James, who was pretty bad for all intents and purposes in terms of production, all he did enough to win games, and Sam Darnold being his best player. And let's take a look at his team
Mm.
right now. It's kind of the same mold as Steven's team, right? There's our guy, Kyrie Williams.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tyrone Tracy kind of came. I know he was like a darling pick middle of the year because their running back situation was in wool in tatters, and yeah, Tyrone Tracy took over that running back situation. So good for him.
Mm,
Well, might as well DK Metcalf, which is a guy I always liked, but this year I avoided him for some odd reason. How he do? Yeah, there's a reason why yeah, got off to a great start, and then there's a reason why people avoided him for in drafts. Cooper Cup is this the beginning of the end for him? Some good weeks, man,
I'd like to think not. Yeah,
but
yeah.
then he missed this whole big chunk of time, and then laid a goose
Just
egg in the fantasy
numbers.
playoffs.
Yeah, yeah. I'd like to think that it's not the beginning of the end, but the numbers at the end of the year kind of speak for themselves. It it doesn't look like it's trending well, and with um, the Rams having Puka, that doesn't necessarily bode well for like trying to have a serious comeback year. I mean, of
Yeah.
course, Stafford will throw the ball to anybody, but it doesn't make it doesn't make it as obvious of like, oh yeah, he'll just come back next year and put up like 1,000 yards or 1,200 or whatever.
Another interesting player that James has is Travis Etienne. A huge
Mm-hmm.
disappointing year, especially where he was drafted, and that's probably one of the main reasons why James had to like scramble to just do what he can to just band-aid up this team. As I just kind of look at the individual players really quickly here. But
Mm-hmm.
Travis Etienne, I like players of Travis Etienne's profile status,
Mm-hmm.
his build, the makeup, and all that. Is there a big bounce back year coming in next season, or is that is or did we see the best of Travis Etienne Jr. here?
He's with the Chiefs now, right?
Jaguars, Travis Etienne.
Jaguars. Oh yeah, my bad. I was looking at
Probably
something
because I was
else.
looking at DeAndre Hopkins. Go ahead.
That's probably why. Um, I don't know. The Jaguars just played really, really bad as a whole this year. Yeah, it didn't help that there's a few games where Trevor Lawrence played okay-ish, but then yeah, he got laid out on that one hit and then was out the rest of that game. And I think the next week after that. I'd I'd hope they'd be able to play better as a group next year,
Yeah,
and that uh, Travis would be able to get some good numbers. Man, they just look so horrible.
yeah.
It's not giving me confidence to think that next year is going to be any better.
Rico Dottle is a guy I was high on. It just the Cowboys just frustrate me to no end. I mean,
Mm,
why he wasn't given the chances, but when he was given the opportunities, he did take advantage of those. I mean, 20 carries against a very was supposed to be a tough Steelers defense. He scored 16 and a half points. And then what's the running back situation? I know Zeke it was just waived, but he was signed at the beginning of the year, so he kind
yeah.
of had to
There
take up some
really wasn't
touches.
any other
Who?
options, but there wasn't really any other options. We had no depth at that position. We didn't have any depth on the line either, so that definitely sucked.
But
And
who was the primary guy to start the year off? Was it Tony Pollard? No, it
yeah,
wasn't.
because
No, Pollard
Pollard
went to the
was with
Titans.
the Titans.
Yeah, sorry about that.
I th- I'm I think Dowdle actually was.
No, 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 no way. I'm gonna find out.
It was
Running because I remember Dottle was picked up as a speculative pick at the beginning of the year. Like if this happens, if that happens, Dottle might get those touches. What the hell? It says Rico Dottle and Deuce Vaughn. No, no, no. There was another guy in here at the
Deuce Vaughn
beginning.
didn't really play that much.
Yeah, so this is like the most up to date. Cowboys depth chart
Uh,
because of all
so
the injuries and stuff.
no, I remember what it was. Zeke was still getting too many touches,
Ew. Dalvin Cook was part of the running back depth back in October, it looks like.
and he barely played.
That's disgusting. You have a perfectly good Rico Dottle there, and you're just mucking things up, bringing up these old ass veteran players who are washed. That's terrible, man. That's just that's just bad
That's
roster
very
management, and
very
that falls on what's his face, Jerry Jones. That's a,
yeah.
that's a this is a Jerry Jones problem. Oh my God, this was the year
You
for
always
Rico
think
Dottle
that
to
he's
do
smarter
something.
than everybody, and these are the kind of moves that you make when you think a little too highly about yourself. Having Zeke come back and then use him too much when he was putting up absolutely nothing. Are we being serious right now? Like that? That's a horrible move.
Yeah, I'm looking to see what this looked like at the beginning of the year, but I just kind of failed to imagine that Zeke was the number one guy, and that's just embarrassing, man.
Hmm.
Like fantasy leaguers were screaming, "No, Rico Dottle is the guy. Rico Dottle is the guy." And if fake sports fans are seeing this, why isn't the real sports owner, front office personnel guy seeing it the same way that we're seeing it? Let's see.
Hmm.
Another way to look at it is just go like this. Oh, Rico Dottle was the owner, was the only running back. Oh, by the way, Pinos is also a Cowboys fan, if I remember correctly. James
Hmm.
says the Avengers. Rico Dottle was the only Dallas, according to this thing, if I typed it in the right way, was the only running back from the Cowboys that was drafted, and he got drafted in the 10th round, which really sucks because in a perfect world, I would have gotten both Chase Brown and Rico Dottle, but I didn't
Hmm.
because I was high on Rico Dottle. But again, it's one of those situations where, oh, never mind, I got Trey Benson, so oops. But yeah, this is what we were expecting from Rico Dottle. These 11 and a half, 16 and a half, 18 and a half. Yeah, there's going to be valleys here, but that's because well, these were some tough defenses. The Eagles, the Texans, and the Commanders on the road. That's always going to be a tough
Yes.
matchup. But then he bounced back, didn't do much in the final two games of the fantasy playoffs. But this is the point of the season where the Cowboys are just. This is the point of the season where they're just giving up, man. It's just terrible. So Rico Dottle should be moving up draft boards, but man, this would have been the year to get him. And for fantasy leaguers to reap the benefits of a Rico Dottle
Mhm.
breakout year. So that's unfortunate. Anyway, that's a lot of guys who did not perform up to par with this team, but give James credit. This is a
Pretty
masterclass of
solid.
sorts
Yeah.
of how to manage your roster throughout the year so you can win as many games as possible. This is a total. I mean, and James is a pretty damn good fantasy league player, man. So it's not surprised that he
Mhm.
was able to make chicken salad out of chicken, you know what. We finally get to the champion. Finally, we made it. Noah. He calls himself the Bakery because I believe, yep, Baker Mayfield, breakout superstar that he is. Still can't believe that Baker Mayfield. I know that we mentioned that he's gone through some bad situations, but still, it's Baker Mayfield.
Yeah.
The way I talk about Sam Darnold and like, no, you got to talk about Justin Jefferson. It's the same way I view Baker Mayfield. No, you got to talk about Mike Evans.
Yeah.
But regardless,
Noah had the highest scoring team in the league, had the highest point differential on average.
yeah, pretty much what do they call end to end dominated this league, right? At 12-2.
Yeah.
He dominated this league end to end. And it started with this three-headed monster at running back, Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs. There was one other guy. Oh, David Montgomery. Oh my God.
Mhm.
And I remember at the beginning of the season, this is a good solid team, but I kind of am concerned about your running back situation because these are guys who are not known to be able to catch the ball out of the backfield. It didn't matter
Mhm.
because you know what happened? We can't. It was a return of the cowbell running back. 3 yards in
Mhm.
a cloud of dust. Apparently, that's what's in now. I thought this was a passing league. People told me this is a passing league. They might as well play flag football. They said, nope,
And
nope.
passing numbers weren't they either at or close to an all-time low for the past like 20 years?
I mean, quarterback plays has been really terrible. I mean, yeah, we talk about the elite players, but every
Outside of
team,
like 4 or 5 guys, is like everyone else is just kind of like in a like just they're just kind of there.
and then who's saving a lot of these teams? It's these former highly touted first round quarterback prospects who are saving the Vikings, the Tampa Bay Bucks. But
Mm,
everybody's trying to tank every goddamn year. Oh man, we got to tank so we can get a top five pick and draft a quarterback who's gonna flame out after 3 years. But then we're gonna see that quarterback flourish on a new team.
yeah,
What are we doing here?
yeah.
This is I don't know. People tell me that Felipe, you just don't understand how football works. Like, well, I know that this is not the way it should be working. I know that much. This is because this
But
is
also, these teams that are making these draft picks are horribly run teams. They don't develop their players very well.
yeah.
So it makes sense that someone who's like Heisman caliber in college would come into a terrible spot and then a couple years later would have to kind of like quote unquote revive themselves on another team. And I see Baker and Sam Darnold did that, and they were pretty solid guys, when they came out of college, but they were on teams that didn't know how to wipe their own butt.
Quickly moving gears here. I'm looking at the top receiving running backs in the league, and these are some pretty darn good running backs too. I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs, explosive. Alvin Kamara, the model of consistency. Davon Achan, we just talked about him being the best player on Steven's team. Bijan Robinson. But I just wanted to point out like what, and then there's Rashad White. Oh, the two-headed monster of Bucky Irving and Rashad White. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the other problem that Rashad White was that Bucky Irving is just as good, if not a little bit better, at catching the ball out of the backfield. So rest in peace, Rashad White being running back number one. But sure enough, there's Aaron Jones. Not in the top. What would that be? One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine, 10. Outside of the top 10. Oh, number 11. Oh, wait. I'm looking at the Baker. Sorry. There's David Montgomery, a guy who I've always been very critical about him not knowing how to catch the ball out of the backfield. 36 catches for 341 yards. That's pretty darn good, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Right there on the heels of Austin Eckler, who might just be one of the best or one of the better pass catching running backs of his generation. Chase Brown, who I drafted because he can catch the ball out of the backfield. 54 catches, 360 yards, and David Montgomery with less catches
But at the
gained
same
20
time,
yards less, only
mhm.
20 yards less. Josh Jacobs right there as well, 340 yards, but only 35 catches. Maybe I shouldn't be looking at this at yards. I should be looking at catches. Let's look at pass catches out of running backs. Oh my God, Devon Achan, 78 receptions. That's just crazy. Let's see.
You got receivers that are fairly decent that don't even get close to that many catches.
It's crazy,
That's
man. And see,
wild.
this is more indicative as to what I was talking about with Noah's running back situation, but I guess it doesn't matter. But yeah, David Montgomery is near the bottom of these full-time players at pass
Mm,
catchings with 36. Josh Jacobs at 35, and I well, there's Najee Harris, who's notorious for just being a 3 yards in a cloud of dust kind of guy. When I think about pass catching running backs, I don't think about Najee Harris. So those two guys
mm.
I just mentioned are closer to Najee Harris than they are to some of the top tier pass catching running backs. Didn't matter though. There's Derrick Henry, only 19 catches this year, and that's what I was suggesting. Didn't it turns out it
Mm.
didn't matter because we saw a renaissance of running backs this past season. So. And then when they did catch the ball, they got a huge amount of yards out of it. So, is this the new trend there, Alex, or was this an anomaly this year?
I want to say that this could be a new trend where running backs are really being a thing again. Maybe not entirely just your top guy being like a Saquon or a Derrick Henry or anyone like that, but could be for certain teams like just a group of guys that equal that uh, same kind of production. But it's been a while since running backs have really been like this. So I mean, I guess we'll figure it out. But I would like to think that this trend could continue. It would be, I feel like in a lot of ways it would be good for the sport.
Yeah. Yeah, just kind of like it just creates familiarity. People can gravitate because this guy did very well last year. Of course, I know who Derrick Henry is and Josh Jacobs and David Montgomery are. I'm looking at the Bo Nix transaction. Yeah, I had him for a couple of weeks, and then Noah that said, "Yeah, okay, well Felipe didn't want him, so I'm just gonna grab him the rest of the season." And I should have been a little bit more patient. I think I would have been better off at him and running back, but I was just playing the matchups at that time. I
Mhm.
don't know when I had him. Maybe I had him for what was the dates again? October 23rd. So we might be looking in the middle of the season. Because these are because he started out as a rookie and he's there's rookie growing pains and then easy matchup against the Raiders he blows up. But then I guess this is the week that James dropped him and maybe I picked him up on this week against the Panthers.
Mhm.
Maybe that's what happened. Hey, Bo Nix had a really good rookie year, all things considered, man. And I'm really kicking myself that how good my team would have been if I would have just stuck to if I would have had a little bit more faith in him. But
Mhm.
oh well,
There
lesson
are
learned.
people that were really, getting on the like the older quarterback, uh being a first year player. It's like, oh well, the whole idea of wanting to draft players as young as they can be to develop them, blah 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 blah. Not trying to necessarily trash Anthony Richardson, but the dude was okay 1 year in college, got drafted really high, hasn't really been consistent, hasn't really given, at least hasn't really given me the confidence to think that the numbers will go up in any kind of way. But then you got a guy like Bo Nix who's what, like 24, 25 years old.
Mm.
And it took him a few weeks to kind of get things going, but he had a really solid year. And maybe sometimes and this happens even in hoops too, where you'll draft a guy that's 19 because you can have like 3 or 4 years to get it, um, to develop him and get out of him what you're hoping for. But maybe some teams in these sports need to trust that if a guy's a little bit older, maybe doesn't have as high of a ceiling, but you're getting more solid production from the get go.
It's not an exact science. I know that much. And in terms of Bo Nix, just getting back to this aspect of the game, Sean Payton, once again, he'll get credit for developing this guy. So I guess
Hmm.
once again, coaching matters. It's the whole situation. Well, the Bears should have drafted Pat Mahomes, and their fortunes would have been different. No, the other quarterback they were considering in 28, what year was that? 2016?
20,
Whatever that
27.
Trubisky draft was, 2017 maybe. The other quarterback they were really considering was Deshaun Watson. Pat Mahomes is an afterthought, but
Hmm.
if, say Pat Mahomes does come with the Bears, John Fox is there, and John Fox doesn't really doesn't care who his quarterback is. He's won playoff games with Jake Delhomme and Tim Tebow. That should
Yeah.
tell you all you need to know about John Fox. If you get him a first round quarterback, especially one that he did not choose because he wanted Deshaun Watson. Imagine what his staff would have how they would have ruined Pat Mahomes. Coaching matters.
Hmm.
It in
Yeah.
the NFL, coaching matters, especially at quarterback. I mean, we see it all the time. Coaching matter for Jared Goff. Although you could say, well, if Jared Goff didn't understand, didn't flourish under Sean McVay. I mean, then there was something wrong with Jared McGough. And then you look at what he's done with the Detroit Lions, and he's become this MVP caliber type of player that he never was
Hmm.
in Los Angeles. And if anything, the Rams were winning games in spite of Jared Goff. That was the sentiment. Now in Detroit, he is the
The
Ford
reason why
motor
they're
engine.
really good. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, going back, I'm looking now. I guess I should have been more patient with Bo Nix, and my quarterback situation would have been better off. I think I started him against the Panthers and Ravens. He did so bad against the Ravens, I dropped him. And then what's his face? Noah picked him up, and he got the
Mhm.
benefit of all those points. So Bo Nix, probably someone I'm gonna keep an eye on for next season. But yeah, the three-headed running back, Baker Mayfield being an MVP caliber type of player, and his wide receivers, AJ Brown, Nico Collins, Jacoby Meyer, they all pretty much stayed healthy from what I remembered.
Mhm. Yeah.
And
And
so
there's only one kind of flashy name there, but they stay healthy and they put up some pretty decent numbers. So in hindsight, I can't complain about those draft picks. So he got a good spot going.
yeah, and then that's the reason. That's how you create a top team in a league like this. Make all the right moves, obviously, in the draft, make all the right moves. Oh, yeah, Nico Collins did miss a huge chunk of games right here. Yeah, I remember now. But when he was healthy, he was the one shining light for the Texans.
Hmm.
Jacoby Myers, I would have drafted him if it wasn't for Noah, and he did enough to be relevant. I mean, he was basically the only wide receiver worth noting for the Raiders. George Kittle, he was hurt a lot, but I know I say Brock Bowers is the number one guy, but Brock Bowers is the number one guy in terms of total fantasy points. In terms of
Hmm.
average fantasy point, George Kittle just proved once again that he's ageless. Just
Yeah.
continue. But again, the injuries are trying to catch up. Otherwise, he would have probably finished in total points. Yeah, he missed a couple of games, and then there were some stinkers against the Bills,
Hmm.
so that's gonna hurt him. And AJ Brown, I mean, the guy's a beast. Guy's a huge beast. But what happened with him? Oh wow, so
He missed
freaking
the
Noah won
first.
all these games with all these injured wide receivers in a PPR league. It just speaks volumes as to how good of a season Baker Mayfield had and the three-headed monster that he had at running back.
Hmm.
So, and there it is. That's how you build up a squad, and that is your reigning champion. And we're gonna be gunning for him next season, Noah Miller.
Hmm.
Um, anything else you have to say about any of this chart or the league in general before I let you go? You got the last word here.
I feel like we mentioned earlier, uh, we could probably just do a two tight end. I'm not entirely for getting rid of the defense. I would, if it was me, I would personally just adjust some of the uh points for like sacks, whatever, and maybe add the defensive players so that you have to actually have individual people. But I felt like the league did pretty well this year, other than a couple uh, issues with seeming one squad that looked like it was pretty good and they just didn't, turn out well. Hopefully, well, I know you're going to be like, oh well, we're not going to try to wish bad luck Angel any luck or anything, but maybe his his squad next year can be a contender. Um, I mean, I guess like at what point does the bad luck run out? Like,
Yeah.
is it's just been a it's been a trend in multiple leagues, and this when is the year that he's finally gonna be able to get a team that really does something, competes for the title, actually might win something maybe. Um, yeah, I don't know. I know for me, I need to. not take the injured players. But yeah, I just hope the league next year can be just as competitive, if not even more competitive. And um, curious to know if the running backs are still going to be the go. I hope they are, but we'll see.
Yeah, and that's I'm gonna talk to him about it, but yeah, and it's not like we're talking about Angel just being a inactive owner and guy that doesn't know what he's doing or anything like that. I mean, the guy tries. He tries really hard
Hmm.
to make these preparations, but it might just be like a game to game kind of situation where
Hmm.
that's a problem. Like he's not able to adjust properly because we saw some teams out there that had no business making the playoffs, had no business, being a threat to get as many wins as they did this past season. Like James and Steve come kind of come to mind in that regard this season. But one thing I will say about James and Steve is that they know what the hell they're doing, and from a game to game to game aspect, they're as good as game fantasy managers as I know in my little circle here. I've been playing against James for like the last 6 or 7 years now. I've played against Steve all my life, and Steve's always a contender for every single league that I'm in,
Hmm.
football or baseball. And James, he like I said, he's a guy that it comes in very knowledgeable in all the sports that we play, football, baseball, and basketball.
Hmm.
And that's the common ground. It's like he knows how to set the lineup to put himself in a good position to win. And I don't want to bash Angel too much, and I'm not accusing him that he doesn't know what he's doing out there because, like I said, he tries. I had him on the guest as a guest on this podcast before, and he holds his own. He
Hmm.
there's always a good solid explanation, and like when you talk to him, oh, that makes sense. Yeah, so but at some point it just can't be, well, the players are not performing because when I use that excuse, people come after me. Like that's not a good excuse, Felipe. No, why are you messing up? You're the one with the podcast. Why is the guy with the podcast losing in fantasy football? You know,
Hmm.
why didn't you win a championship in baseball this past year? Well, I won two the previous year, but what have you done for us lately, Felipe? Where's your trophy case, Felipe? But I
Um,
got third place, second place, and second place, man. What more do you want? I mean, that's pretty darn good, I thought. Well, my neighbor, he wins a championship every single year that he plays against his coworkers. So why can't you win? Like, shit, I don't know, man. I'll tell you why, man. Angel would rather be finishing second place and then being an afterthought in this league, so or whatever. But and I don't want to bash Angel. I just that's the example because it started out as a
yeah.
running joke, and now we're like seeing like this. I mean, it's still a running joke, it's a running gag, but now we're just seeing some consistencies that are just they keep rearing its ugly head, and it's a good exercise. It's a good topic of discussion. Like why does it keep happening to the guy? Why does it keep happening to the guy? But then some people would say,
Mhm.
well, you're like the Buffalo Bills of fantasy championships, and every time you talk, you're always losing. All right, well, I'm still making money. I mean, these guys are still paying my trip for my next World Baseball Classic. So just like they, just like they paid for my
Yeah.
first trip, and I didn't use any of my real money. Shit, it's my fantasy money to make that trip. And if anybody who is an official, this is all metaphor. I don't mean real money. I mean the metaphor money, man. Yeah, that's a ticket. Anyway. But yeah, I'm looking at the points. Yeah, I guess there's ways. Maybe instead of each sack being worth 3 points, I just go back down to one or make it worth half a point.
Mhm.
Just micromanage that. I mean, I'll keep the touchdowns intact, but maybe do micro points for the sacks and the block punts and the interceptions, the fumble recoveries and things of that nature. Maybe I'll scale back that. I'll scale that back a little bit. But I still punish teams for being really bad at defense, I thought so. But we'll see. I mean, maybe I will. I'll just tweak the numbers there. How are the passing? Yeah, passing yards. I don't even know what the hell this means. But 200ths of a point for every passing yard. So what does that mean? So I think if a quarterback gets to 300 yards, that's only worth 6 points. That's a touchdown. Come on.
Yeah.
All right then. Stop complaining.
With 300 yards.
If he completes 20 passes, that's half a point. So how much is that? 20 times point zero 0.05. Oh, point zero 0.05 is not zero 0.5. Point 0.5, sorry. That's 10
Um,
points. What's the problem? If a guy completes 20 passes and gets 300 yards, that's 16 points right there. What more do you want? And if he scores a touchdown, if he passes a touchdown, that's 5 points. That's that's 21 points. What's the problem? And if he's throwing bombs, 40-yard touchdowns and 50-yard touchdowns, it's an additional 5 points. So why are you guys complaining? Stop drafting back quarterbacks like Pat
I know
Mahomes.
that I know that Noah complained when he had Kirk Cousins. And I'm like, well, that's probably because it's Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, don't start Kirk Cousins. You're not even. How about
To be
see?
a team that finished 12-2 when he spent half the year with Kirk Cousins,
Yeah, and
that's
then his best
crazy.
player ends up being Baker Mayfield. So I don't want to hear it. And then I still give you a bonus point if your guy gets to 400 yards. So all is not lost. No, I like my point system. It's not that bad. It's just that everybody wants to have 50. Not everybody can be having 50 freaking fantasy points at quarterback. I mean, that's what they call inflation. I'm the Fed. I'm the Felipe. The Felipe tatership, all right? My job is to
Mhm.
scale back on inflation.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, enough of that. Oops. All right, man. Well, I thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoy the rest of your Saturday, and
Yeah, of course, man.
look forward
Appreciate it.
to see what we do next year in this league.
Yeah, I'm really excited. Hope everything goes well for you, and hope things turn better for me.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I really want to get this league into fan tracks, and
Mhm.
I want to. If it's free at fan tracks, then I'm definitely gonna bring it over there because I like the fan tracks user interface a little bit better than ESPN,
Mhm.
and the goal is to eventually, help pay for some of those bells and whistles and get a keeper situation going and,
Mhm.
you know, go from there and include that little wrinkle into this league of ours. It's like, yeah, I mean, we're all good at picking players on a year-to-year basis, but what happens when you have to think about the future? Like, can you
Mhm.
perform? And that's going to be interesting to see when you add that little wrinkle there. So anyway, Alex, thank you so much. That's him over in Virginia, Cowboy, Notre Dame fan. Who's gonna win the college football championship this year?
If Notre Dame
Of
can
course,
be on
of
offense,
course.
that's that's the team that they could probably do it. If they have another stinker on offense, then they're probably gonna go next game.
Wait, is next week already the championship game or no?
No, the this upcoming week is the semifinal. They play Penn State,
Ah,
and
okay.
Texas plays Ohio State. So then it'll be, I think the 20th is the final.
Wow. Going into Martin Luther King weekend and we're still talking about college football. How crazy is that? Oh, so they haven't even played the Rose Bowl. I mean, they haven't even played the Cotton Bowl or the Orange Bowl yet. That is insane. That,
Yeah.
bro, man, we gotta figure out a way to get these games out by December. This is ridiculous, man. I don't like this. I'm not a college football fan like the way you are, or like the way I used to be back in the 90s, but this is offending me, man. I'm used to New Year's Day as being the big college football day, and now your championship is being decided on January 20th. Not a fan. Not a fan. You got to take advantage. The problem is that they want to have these cupcake games against Alcorn State or Chipmunk Valley University in September to, pad up their stats and make themselves look good, man. They should just be playing in August and finish by November and just have all this crap being decided by November by January 5th or something. I don't know. If you can't do it New Year's Day, definitely by January 6th or something like that. Get this thing decided, man. This January 20th is too long, bro. I don't like it. Not a fan. Not a fan. What about you? You like that stuff? For the stupid ass playoffs
Hey,
being a month long?
hey, for me. The more football, the
Oh, sorry,
merrier it is.
not a month long, but going deep into January. You're a big fan of that? College football going deep into January. These kids are trying to start their second semester at school, and they got these pesky football games in the way. What do you think of all that? You say it's the better, but you still think it's the more the better, or is January 20th too long for you?
January 20th might be a little too long, but at the same time, no shade to anybody. We know that there's a lot of uh, quote unquote students out there that don't go to class. So I think January 20th is fine for them. I just know I like it in the sense because it does kind of uh, make the weekends or like sometime around the weekend a little like more fun because you still get both college and pro football around the same time, a little bit longer. But maybe they could like move it a week up.
Uh, the I didn't realize that Ohio State and Texas were playing at the Cotton Bowl, so that's a
Hmm.
home field advantage situation for the Longhorns.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
then at the Orange Bowl, it's going to be Penn State and Notre Dame. And all I keep thinking about Notre Dame at the Orange Bowl is that nothing ever good happens for them at the Orange Bowl. At least when quick memory in my brain, I just think of all the times they had to go in the 80s and 90s into the Orange Bowl, and then they get smacked around by Miami Hurricanes when they were actually good at football. Uh, I don't know, man. This we might see Penn State and Texas and Atlanta the way this thing is rounding out. I don't know. It's gonna. I don't think. You might be counting your chickens a little too early if you think Notre Dame's gonna just win outright here, but we'll
Yeah,
see.
I'm not necessarily saying they're going to win outright. I'm just saying that if the offense looks really good, we know that their defense is really solid. Gave up the second fewest points per game, so yeah, they're always going to be able to hang in. The offense is really good, then they'll probably keep on chugging.
All right, well there you go. You got me talking about stupid college football. We
College.
might have to do that. You might have to come back and explain to me what players I need to look out for these four teams who. And don't give me all, this guy's good. Give me some NFL prospects. That's what I'm. That's the only reason I care about college football. Who's gonna be starting on running back for me next year? As I try to pick up the pieces here for a very disappointing
Oh,
fantasy football year.
so you don't want to know who could be on the practice squad in like 4 years?
Dude, if they're on the practice squad in 4 years, this is all a failed experiment. But that's a different conversation for a different time. Anyway, let me let you go. Thanks for being on. We'll talk later. This was the Total Yards podcast. We'll see you all soon next time. Have a good one, everybody. See ya.